Ready to begin, I believe.
Wait, that's the assessment.
We're all set? Oh, okay. We're not ready to begin. I'm waiting for a light, which says that we're on. We're on? Good. Good morning again. I'm glad to have you all here this morning, and I want to begin by thanking the people of Lewiston for allowing us to use their chambers here for this hearing today. We appreciate the help. I will begin by introducing the members of the commission and the staff who are present this morning. And I will begin by saying that two of our members are absent. Ellen Gorman and Paula Silsby are traveling, and prior commitments prevented them from being here, but they will watch this on the recorded version of it, so they will not miss out on any of the statements that anyone wishes to make. So with regard to the rest of the commission, I'm Dan Wathen, I chair the commission, and I'll ask to my left, to my right, rather.
Good morning. I'm Toby Dilworth. I'm a lawyer in Portland.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Anthony Ng. I'm a psychiatrist up in Bangor.
And I'm Debbie Bader. I'm a retired forensic psychologist.
I'm Jeff Rushlow. I'm a retired district attorney and retired district court judge.
Okay. I have a list of, staff, excuse me, yes.
Good morning, I'm Ann Jordan, I'm the Executive Director.
And I'm Jim Osterreiter, retired FBI agent on staff as an investigator.
Okay. I have a list of people who wish to speak, and I'll ask you in advance if I mispronounce your name, forgive me. I'll do the best I can. And the folks who will speak will come up and be seated up here. So we'll begin with, the first is Tammy Asselin and her daughter Tony.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Tammy, and this is Tony, my 11-year-old daughter, who wished to join me today and has decided that she doesn't mind answering questions of yours, but would rather wait to do so in private at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Is that fine? Do you want to stay with me here? No? You want to get up and go to the room? Okay. I told her she could go to the room. I felt it was important to provide you with a face of a child that was there that evening. Pardon me as I try to wade through this for my emotions. But yeah, I felt it was important. I'm not sure if any of you had seen a child that was affected from that evening, but I felt it was important, and she feels very strongly as well. And we've had several discussions about what's transpired, and she amazes me at her strength and resiliency since it's transpired. So, dear Commission members, as I mentioned, I'm Tammy, and I'm here before you today on behalf of myself and my 11-year-old daughter, Tony, and my beloved cousin, Tricia. The night started like most Wednesday nights, kids having fun, Coach Bob having a fun jab at me, and us preparing to bowl a makeup session for our Saturday Youth League. This particular night was slightly different than previous Wednesdays due to some lane issues. Those of us with kids who were there for the regular practice night were assigned to the usual lanes. However, those of us that were there with the kiddos who were making up a bowling session were assigned to the lanes on the opposite side of the bowling alley where the candlepin bowling is. We had just finished our first game. My daughter and I had also finished eating and had gone to the front desk to ask for some to-go containers. My daughter and I had noticing that they were busier than usual, I decided to walk away and didn't stay to chat like I would normally. I had just gotten back to the table, sat down for a moment, and noticed another parent coming to check her kid's score and then go back to her younger child to keep them entertained when out of nowhere our lives changed forever. After hearing that first sound, I immediately started to move towards it and noticed my daughter following me too. Something made me stop and not go all the way towards it. It was, oh, sorry, I lost my place. All right, something made me stop and not go all the way. It was what I was witnessing in front of me and couldn't wrap my mind around what was truly happening. In all my years of talking about what to do in emergency, I remember the fight or flight, but had never heard of freeze. Sadly, I froze and stood there for way too long, watching, and still not completely believing what I was seeing. I'm still not 100% sure what snapped me out of it, but I definitely remember seeing him turning towards me, and then I turned and noticed my daughter was no longer beside me. I made a quick decision to dive for cover, hoping the whole time my daughter was okay, but had no idea where she was. I sadly also hurt myself very badly when I fell and essentially willed myself to army crawl further out of potential harm's way and noticed my friend's child there without their parent, as they were the individual I had mentioned previously who was keeping their younger child entertained. And I did my best to cover them and protect them and prayed their parent and sibling were okay. This child happened to have a phone and we used it to call 911. We managed to get through and made a statement, then got disconnected. I tried to get through again and was successful this time, and they stayed on the phone with me until we were evacuated. While still in the bowling alley, I pleaded with law enforcement that were in the bowling alley to please locate my daughter. They seemed overwhelmed, and I wasn't entirely sure they heard me as they pleaded with us to get out quickly, but of course, due to my injury, I did need help. I remember looking down and seeing all of our stuff around me and things I knew my daughter may need, and so quickly grabbed up everything I could so I would have it when I saw her. Outside, I stood in the street, and by this time, my parents had arrived and came around to join me. I stood there and sobbed and prayed for my daughter's safety. Eventually, a young lady officer had arrived and was heading in when I stopped her and asked her to please help me find my daughter. I don't believe I could begin to describe to anyone here how it could possibly feel to be in my shoes that night, standing there alone and feeling unheard, desperate for answers. About 45 minutes went by with no updates, no info. No matter who I asked, no one had any info. And then my father got the call. "Pepe, I'm not dead." Those 4 words have haunted me and my family. Shortly after, I got notified from a friend that 911 is trying to reach me on the phone that I had used. I got the number and called them to let them know I had received word that my daughter was safe. I eventually learned she was led to safety by her bowling coach, and she followed another bowling member and their family. She was kept safe by a wonderful family and bowling family member who didn't hesitate to do what any one of us would do and did for our kids. Kids first, adults second. Without a blink of an eye, they got her to safety and eventually notified 911. They had her and she was safe, but to my knowledge, the police were never notified. Moving through the night, it culminated with us at the Lewiston Army, where I received word about my cousin's status and my difficult call to family to notify them about the sad and devastating news I had just learned. I never would have imagined I would ever have to make this phone call. Afterwards, I eventually met with a member of the ATF and gave my statement. I also sought some care for my wounds and eventually was transported home. I was first contacted by my wonderful victim advocate on Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, A week after the tragedy, she introduced herself and invited me to meet the president the following evening. I attended my cousin's funeral that same day. I met the president and couldn't help but think about this. Is this real? This doesn't seem like this day could even happen the way it has. My victim advocate has been wonderful, staying in touch and doing their best to be the most help to us as possible. Upon talking to other victims, I discovered many of those individuals had no idea what a victim advocate was and why they weren't contacted. Most of those individuals impacted were ones who had left the bowling alley prior to us being transported to the armory. However, there were still many who had been at the armory and still had no idea what I was talking about. It definitely is not a fun feeling to feel left out, and especially in this tragic event. As time has gone on, I have done my best, as well as others, to try to keep everyone as up to date as possible. However, it is difficult, and I must admit, sometimes I even feel a tinge of anger when it seemed as if we were feeling left out of the loop with the transparency of information sharing. For example, when I received my letter inviting me to participate and share my story with this commission, I asked others if they had received this letter too and if they would participate. And to my amazement, so many said they had no idea what I was even talking about. It's a moment like this that can and maybe has caused some of us to have ill feelings towards maybe myself and others if they feel excluded. Even if they decide not to participate, at least they need to feel included. It's funny how at the beginning, we, even the community, were united, and I have noticed lately cracks in that unity through a variety of reasons that are perhaps too lengthy to mention, but I'm hopeful that after today, we can rebound and come together, stay together, united to help prevent this from continuing to happen as frequent as it has. In preparing for today, I overlooked previous meetings, watched various videos, and read numerous articles. The one thing I think resonates the most with everything I've read and or watched is enough is enough. It truly angers me to know we are so close to preventing this, and yet we were failed. I would also like to add that when members of local government insist on stating to the press they are 100% certain they have provided the correct answer to the question, do your research, or better yet, use some common sense and actually tell the truth. That you are not able to answer the question is you are not privy to all the information. For example, I remember arriving home that night of the tragedy and watching the news when the Auburn mayor was asked about the children's ages involved, and he insisted there was nobody under the age of 15. Immediately, it infuriated me. Who the heck was he to completely discredit all of us who were there with our extremely young children? I just remember thinking, is this how it's going to be? Am I going to be angry with those who are less knowledgeable than those of us who were there? How would they feel with the movie that plays constantly over and over in our heads day after day during conversations with others, invading everything? Another moment of anger took place when I was listening to the conversation between Army Reservist Captain Jeremy Reamer and Saginaw County Sheriff Sergeant Aaron Schofield. During their conversation, the sheriff references he doesn't want to be throwing a stick of dynamite into a pool of gas. And I'm thinking, aren't you better equipped to handle that than parents, children, and patrons at a bowling alley and restaurant? Then the sheriff went on to share he would contact Paul Card, Robert's brother, and said he'd said to him, "You got his guns, right?" and began to chuckle. Can you imagine how much, especially that chuckle, affected me? I remember thinking, would you still be chuckling at listening to me, begging for help to find my daughter, praying she wasn't hurt or worse, dead? I have often thought about what I think the problem is and how to fix it and so on. I realize it is truly complicated, but my hope is a mom never has to cry, "Where's Tony?" I would love our government officials from our local and up to the present to put down their partisan lines and try to approach us like a parent would. Utilizing simple common sense, we need to start with something. And yes, it may not be perfect, but it's something, and we can adjust accordingly. Just to give you some food for additional thought. As I sat in the town hall meeting held in December regarding the monies raised for victims, I remember at one point turning to the very same bowling coach who helped keep my daughter safe and sharing my thoughts with him. Am I the only one who's thinking how twisted it is we have a system in place to disperse funds to victims of tragedies, but nothing in place to keep it from happening in the first place? I would like you to think about that and digest that and to keep that in mind as you wade through all the information you have gathered and prepare to make your suggestions. Like a previous victim's family said, please find those holes and plug them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the commission or comments? We appreciate your appearance today and your testimony.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to echo that too. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
But I also want you and everyone here to know how incredibly valuable it is to us to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
To hear not only how this impacted you, but sort of what worked and what didn't work in the process. And, I made a note about sort of trying to be more broadly inclusive of the folks who were there at the time and sort of just more inclusive in the victim list, and how perhaps, we've heard wonderful things about the victim witness advocates, but sort of also making that sort of more broadly available.
Right.
But I just have one question about, I'm a psychologist,
Yeah.
so mental health is sort of my thing. And I'm just wondering if you felt like the services were adequate post, as the weeks go by and the months go by to sort of help deal with sort of the emotional aftermath of this.
Yeah, I do have some insight on that. So we were given a list at the Armory the following few days when the FBI set up their post there to return our items and basically for a place for us to go to that had central information. On that list, what was very apparent to me and the difficulties that we ran into is while people volunteered to offer their services, sadly, a lot of it was for 4 to 6 sessions or very temporary, circumstances. So I didn't successfully attain somebody until middle of December, I think. And it was after a lot of help with my daughter's case manager who has been helping. She works through Tri-County. But then a secondary list came out, and again, the same thing. It was 4 to 6. It was very temporary. And so it was very frustrating for most of us to try and find. And those, I understand, who had to wait for a variety of reasons, personal choice or what have you. By the time they had decided to look for those resources, it was so difficult. They could not find somebody who was available, to do long-term. It's like, well, we can do it again for a short period of time, but well, what good is that to those of us who were there, And that's the frustration that we ran into.
That's so incredibly helpful to hear. So, and we're taking notes, so thank you
Yes.
very, very much.
Yes.
Thank you again for you and your daughter and others being here today. And I know it doesn't feel that way now because it's only a few months, but the thing that's going to be most important for all of you is the resiliency of the community, and I think that's going to come out more and more. So I think that's the good thing about the in terms of where this is going. So I encourage you to be hopeful as well as others. Quick question, kind of along the line what Deb was asking.
Yeah.
How did you find out about what service available? I know you went home.
Yes,
And then you didn't get the call from the victim advocate a week later.
right.
Who told you, hey, there's family assistance service here? What service available at the site? And stuff?
Good question. I'm trying to jog my memory now. I think it was either through an email. I remember there was a post somewhere on social media or something about it, I believe.
Word of mouth?
Word of mouth was definitely how I passed it along to everybody once I found out about it. But unfortunately, I can't recall at the moment, but should I recall, I will definitely provide you with
But it wasn't as
that.
organized as you thought you would be.
No, it was very overwhelming. I mean, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how organized it was once we arrived there. They did provide a numerous amount of services, and they were extremely helpful. I was very thankful that it was all in one spot and that they were able to direct us to whatever question we may have. They were able to basically, be a great resource to those of us.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you all set?
I believe that,
I just want to echo what's been said before, and thank you thank Tony as well for.
I will. Great, thank you so much.
I can make one comment too.
Yeah.
Because I was a prosecutor for a long time, I know how valuable the victim advocates have always been to help people through the court process.
Yes,
But in the case of Lewiston, they've been provided to help people when there is no court process.
right.
They've devoted and dedicated an enormous amount of time to helping people like you, knowing there will never be a court case.
Yeah,
And it just impresses me with the flexibility of the offices providing the advocacy services, that they've been able to do that and so generous to helping all the people who needed help. I'm always glad to hear that.
yes. And anytime I call, I always get a wonderful, reply there. I never feel like I'm being turned away, and not being responded. There's always an answer, and if they don't have it, they'll help me find it.
It's great.
Yeah.
that's good news. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And would you
you.
like a copy? I did bring one for you.
Next. Next is Danelle Jasper, I believe. You may want to pull that a little closer to you.
I'm pretty loud, so.
That's good. We like that.
Hi, I'm Danielle Jasper, and this is my husband, John Jasper. We were at Schmenge's on October 25th, 2023. My husband was shot and injured. I want to start by thanking and taking the time for you to take the time to hear from us today. I also want to thank all law enforcement and first responders that showed up that night to help us and protect us. Wednesday, October 25th, 2023 started as a normal Wednesday night. My husband drove us to Schmenge's to enjoy a night of cornhole with our friends. We started playing and enjoying, and everyone had finished their first game and some were on their second when they came. Sitting in our normal spot with my friend Sherry chatting about our week and checking in. We heard a loud bang, and everyone stood up and said, "What was that?" Everyone then hit the floor while continuous gunfire sprayed the room. We hid under the table and were hit with debris. The shooter walked within feet of us, and I looked up just in time to see him grab a new clip. He had seconds to run. I grabbed Sherry and we ran. We were located close to a door that led to a porch, which then led outside. We made it to the parking lot and ran for cover under a pickup truck in the back row of the parking lot. I went from being the strong one in getting us out to being a complete mess, worrying about my husband and his safety. Sherry reassured me he was okay and that I needed to stay quiet. I saw people out in the fields and thought the further the better. The further away from the building, the better. So we ran. Not knowing much information, I knew I needed to at least contact my mom and let her know that I was okay. And while on the phone, I spotted my husband and yelled to him. After letting my mom know we were both okay, I let her go so I could get to my husband. When he walked over to me, the first thing he said was, "Don't worry about me. There are others that need more help." I looked him over and felt we needed to get him checked at least. And next thing I knew, we were on our way to the hospital in the back of a cruiser with a fellow cornhole player. When we arrived at CMMC, the amount of hospital staff waiting to help us was unbelievable. We were escorted to a stretcher while watching fellow cornhole members being brought in with life-threatening injuries. We then got moved to a room and everyone made sure we were comfortable and sure my husband got the best care possible. He had x-rays and CAT scans to make sure the bullet wasn't located too close to any major arteries. When we found out it was safer to leave the bullet in place than to remove it, John was released from the hospital. To this day, John still has peace. We got home, locked the doors, and looked at each other in disbelief this just happened, and thankful that we were both okay, would be okay. I then was on the mission to find out how everyone else was, messaging everyone I could find on Facebook and hearing back from a lot, but unfortunately finding out the horrible news of losing so many great men from Schmengies. The days and weeks that followed were a blur. We had 7 funerals to say goodbye to our fellow cornhole family members. Let that sink in. 7 funerals. Who goes to 7 in a year, let alone weeks? My life has now forever been changed. I don't feel safe. If I walk into a restaurant or a business, I look for places I can hide or ways I can get out. I now judge the people who walk in, not knowing what their intent is. I jump at loud sounds and my heart races 100 miles a minute. I ask questions that I would have never thought to ask till now. Like, hey, are those windows bulletproof? The fear that we now live in is something that will never go away. And I want to end with this. When you sign up to protect and serve your town, your state, or your country, you sign up to do uncomfortable things. So when there is someone who is a danger to themselves or to the community, do the uncomfortable task and protect us.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Yes.
Again, thank you so much. I know how difficult this is, and what I'm most struck by in your comments is what a shared tragedy this is. You're doing a routine sort of recreational activity with people that you've known for a long time, that have been your friends for a long time, so not only are you concerned about your welfare and that of your immediate family, but these are, you know, people and friends that you've known for years, so I just am struck by how that magnifies everything. And I guess I wanted to ask you the same questions, is do you, if this is something you've wanted, do you feel that sort of this post-trauma period, you've gotten the help that you need?
So at first, we did get a list of people who could help us. And the lady that I had wasn't very consistent. She canceled quite a few times. And so it was not very helpful, so I needed to find somebody else, and by that time, a lot of people were already filled, so there was not many options. So I now have to drive 45 minutes in order to get to my counseling, because that was the only person available. But she's been amazing, so it's been helpful.
Well, I'm glad to hear, not so much the 45-minute
Yeah.
trip, but I am glad to hear that you're with someone that you've made a good connection with.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you again for being here, both of you. You mentioned the support in terms of counseling, granted, it's 45 minutes away. For your friends and families who were not in Chemungee that day, or any other places who are experiencing it because of they care about you and others and stuff, are they getting support in any kind of way? Because they probably, I presume they don't have big victims of services, they just,
Like my family members.
your friends and family, yeah.
No one from my immediate family has asked for any help or anything. I think for them, just knowing that we're safe and we're home. I mean, I know they probably are going through a lot in themselves, but they've just been very supportive for us, at least this time.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. One question I have, you mentioned that you made your escape while he was changing this clip.
Yes.
How long did it take for him to do that?
I mean, it was probably seconds. I mean, he was only in the building for 48 or 50 seconds. So, I mean, it was probably only seconds that it was, but he was going into a back room as he was changing it. So I knew that, or I was hoping, I guess, we could have a chance to run. It was just a split-second decision.
And when was John shot? At what point in the event?
It was after he changed that magazine, when he came back out of the pool, pinball room.
You have anything you want to say, John?
Oh, not unless you have any questions.
I would just comment that you mentioned how you think of things when you go into a place now that you never would have dreamed of before. I suspect that that's true from most everybody in Maine. It's been true for me. I thought about it today when I came in here. I thought about it in church yesterday. Whenever you're with a group of people, the thought goes through your mind, which it never, as you say, never would have. So this was a great tragedy for you folks, unbelievable, but I think it's affected everybody in Maine and beyond.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, and if you would like to leave your comments, you could just give them to Ann over there.
Okay.
I will say, though, your presence of mind and your observational, I mean, please know this about yourself, that in a moment that you can never conceive of happening, you had the presence of mind to pay attention to what was going on and to get yourself to safety. And that's, I can only hope that if I were in a similar circumstances, I would have that same presence of mind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Tom Hatfield. Mike, closer to your mouth is the message I got.
I'm fairly loud as well.
Well, I think it was directed at me.
Oh,
Maybe Toby,
okay.
too.
And Toby.
Toby's soft-spoken.
Yeah.
My name is Tom Hatfield. I was at Just in Time Bowling the night of the shooting, and I want to thank you guys for putting this on so that we can come in here and try to convey our thoughts and some of the issues that we're dealing with. I'm very nervous, I'm very anxious, but just bear with me. I'd like to convey some of my thoughts. I'm a member of Apple Valley Golf Course, or Golf League, and that's where I met most of the people that I bowled with. The golf season ended, and they said, hey, come with us and bowl, because they're all great friends. And I did, and it was only the second week of the league when the shooting occurred. But one of the issues that I'm having is that my friends from the golf course and the bowling league are present in my everyday life very often. And so it brings that night forefront more than I would like. And that's a problem I'm having. Back to the bowling alley, my girlfriend and I had just finished a birthday party with my grandson the week before where there was 140 balloons or something like that. And I didn't even hear the balloon pop, but it wasn't a balloon pop, it was a shot. And she asked me, is that a balloon? I didn't even hear it, and I looked and I saw the shooter. Oh, it was unbelievable, it's like, but I saw the silhouette. I guess he had his gun had jammed. So I knew then it was time to go, and I don't know what I did with my bowling ball. I was standing on the lane, it doesn't matter, and I grabbed her, and they say you either fight, flight, hide, or freeze, and I was running away from the shooter, not knowing where there was an exit, and she dove underneath the table. Come down here, and that wasn't me. I'm the flighter, and I remember that look she gave me, that please, come with me, protect me or be with me, and I didn't. I grabbed her and we ran, and I tell people she was like a kite, behind me because I was fleeing as fast as I could, didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. And that's one of the issues I'm having is my memory from when I saw the shooter to when those doors opened in the back of the bowling alley is gone. The only one I have is my girlfriend under the table pleading for me to come with her. And we didn't get hurt, so I guess we made the right move. But I don't know if those memories will come back, and they say they will at time. But at the same time, Tricia Asselin, who was killed in the shooting, was in my lane. She was one of my opponents that night, and she's a good friend of mine. She worked at the golf course. I've golfed with her many times away from the golf course, but she worked there, so I was very close to her, and could call her a very close friend with a big heart and always helping other people. And I'm finding that her loss is forefront quite often, especially now that we're getting ready for golf season and all these things come into mind. So that's one of my issues. I will touch on another subject, the mental health care or the psychiatric care. My girlfriend had just lost her husband 4 years ago to cancer, and she'd been going through counseling. And so she had a session like 4 days later, and it was helpful for her. And then I went and saw that same person. I got some help, and I saw her for 2 or 3 months, maybe 2 months, I can't recall. And I'll say that I thought I was doing better, and I went through a terrible divorce like 8 years ago, and I'm still recovering from. Not recovering from, but I still have pain and hatred. And I didn't know that I was not recovered until I went to the Resiliency Center. I went there a week ago Wednesday or something like that, one of the last sessions before they decided to extend it. And I realized then that I wasn't as well as I thought. I often use this phrase when people ask me, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing great," until I realize I'm not. And realizing I'm not is actually what's more present is I'm not good. I'm good at putting on a mask. I'm good at making people think I'm fine. And maybe it's from my profession, maybe it's from my divorce, I don't know. But I just want to say the Resiliency Center was helpful, and I'm looking forward to some more meetings there. And the last thing I'll say is I'm representing a lot of my friends from the golf course and the bowling alley that can't be here tonight, but have a lot of the same feelings that I have, and a lot of the same memories of Trish, and I'm sure those go on for a long time. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Well, I just, again, I'm going to thank each and every one of you that has the courage to come up here and speak. So I really thank you for that. And I am struck by your, it's like when it's a circle of friends that are involved, it is a shared experience that can bring you close together, but also is a constant reminder. So that frankly, that aspect of it didn't occur to me until you spoke about it. So again, it's just so helpful to hear the perspective of people. And what I want to say to you is just your awareness of the fact that you're not doing great yet, even though sometimes you put on the mask, as we all do, just to kind of get through daily life. But your awareness of that is a very positive sign, because it means you're going to hopefully keep going to the Resiliency Center and just keep addressing it, and until, will you ever be fine in the sense that you had of being fine pre-tragedy? I don't know, but it's going to be a different kind of fine, probably.
I was struck by almost every one of you, as was other meetings, that start off with their presentation. I'm nervous. And for people who are nervous, you folks are sure doing a good job with it and being courageous and things. So, and I think this just speaks to how, the respect and the courage you folks all demonstrate as, as you're going through this thing. For the next year, you folks will be going to do a roller coaster ride, unfortunately, because it's the news events and you kind of remember what's going on and things like that. And then when the 1 year anniversary comes, things may be different, and I think that's where the ongoing courage you folks have and the community resilience piece is what's going to get you through this. So thank you for being an example, as all of you were, have been and will be, to kind of be here and share your story with us and things like that. So I just want to say that you have the state's deepest respect for how you folks can deal with this.
Thank you. Next is Sherry Stanton.
Thank you all for meeting with us today. I'm going to just jump right in and share my story. On Wednesday, October 25th, I went to Schmenge's to meet with my partner Danielle and her husband John to play in our weekly cornhole league. It started like any other night. We played our first game against Kyle and Steve and then had a seat at our normal table. I was sitting facing towards the door, playing with my phone and talking to Danielle when the chaos ensued. Everyone stopped in their tracks and we heard a loud explosion. At first, I thought it was a keg that had exploded. I heard Joe exclaim, "What the hell was that?" And unfortunately, it only took a few moments to figure out what was happening. After several more gunshots went off, I found myself staring at the gunman to see if I could help to identify him. I saw black or navy tactical pants and a dark sweatshirt with the hood up, hiding his face from my angle. I saw a black gun with a green laser coming further into the building as he continued to take shots at my friends. He shot two friends just a few feet in front of where I was sitting. Everyone scrambled to hit the floor and to take cover. For a moment on the floor, I closed my eyes, but I knew I had to open them. Robert walked around our table a few feet away, continuing to shoot our friends who were up at the cornhole boards. They had nowhere to go. Robert made his way behind the back partition towards the arcade. At this point, my friend Danielle saw that his gun had jammed. I did not see that, and she tried to encourage me to get out the door. At that moment, I found myself assessing my situation. I had worn sandals there that night, and one of them had come off when I hit the floor. Instinctually, I wanted my second sandal, but I didn't see it, and I threw my other one off, thinking it might be easier to get out with one. I looked at my purse, decided I didn't need that, but did grab my phone that was on the floor next to me before I followed Danielle out the door. We made our way into a small storage room, and after trying several times, we were able to get out the door. We ran through the parking lot and found shelter underneath a large lifted pickup truck in the back row, all the while continuing to hear gunshots being fired inside. Now that we were safe, my friend instantly began to worry about her husband, John, who was still inside. My friend, who is not known for being quiet, proclaimed, "My husband is dead." And I told her I needed her to be quiet so we could keep her safe and get her reunited with her husband. I reassured her that John was okay, even though I was not sure that he was. After a few minutes of not hearing shots being fired, we got out from underneath the truck and ran down to some friends who were by the treatment facility center. At that point, I felt safe enough to call 911. It was clear they had been inundated with calls and had already known what the situation was. We made our way to the road and went up with one of our friends who was able to flee in his truck and then come back once he realized he didn't have his partner. Finally, we were by the road with friends, and Danielle's husband came out with his pants blown out. A bullet had hit him in the wallet in his left front pocket. Bits of his pants and wallet contents were hanging as he had pieces of the bullet in his leg. Inside the building, there were people fighting to stay alive, and sadly, some took their last breaths there. Others who had just lived through this chaos were still inside, trying to tourniquet and help friends the best that they could. With all the chaos inside, many people did not have their phones. After texting my best friends to tell them I was okay, I helped to try to help other friends get a hold of their loved ones. Police were swarming in at this point. Danielle and John were able to leave in a cruiser with our friend Kyle to go get to the hospital. A few moments later, an officer advised a group of 6 to 8 of us to leave in the truck if we had somewhere to go. So we piled into my friend's truck, and he dropped me off at my house with one of, actually John's cornhole partner, Vinny, where we processed for about an hour what we had seen, what we had been through, and I helped him to get a hold of his family and his wife, who was able to come and pick him up shortly after. The next hours and days were devastating to watch everything unfold. It was heartbreaking to learn of friends who had been badly injured, or even worse, to learn who had been killed. It was upsetting to learn after that there had been many warning signs and even cries for help for Robert. I wish that something had been handled differently and that all of this had never happened. No one should have to experience something so horrific. There have been so many thoughts and feelings since that fateful night in October. I have battled my own struggles, and I have been witness to so many of my friends struggling. Through all the pain, we have stayed together as survivors to form what now feels like a family. I think we have all found incredible solace in that. I think we all lost a lot the night of October 25th. I just hope that moving forward, there is reform with mental health and that we can prevent tragedies like this from happening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments?
Just to repeat what I think has been said before for other witnesses today, which is you're showing amazing courage coming in here, but it's also pretty obvious that all of you showed amazing courage that night. And we used to always hear about the two options being fight or flight. It's pretty clear that there's a third option, freeze or hide. And none of them are the right answer, but none of them are the wrong answer either.
Yeah.
And nobody should ever feel guilt about what they did. And so I'm just amazed at your powers of observation, what you were able to see that night, and it's just horrible that you had to see it. My question, though, is you've referred to the shooter as Robert. Did you recognize him in that night?
I didn't recognize him that night, but I after I found out who he was, I did have recollection of playing with him in a previous, not in a league necessarily, but in like a Friday night pickup game. And I remember thinking when I met him, because I'm very friendly, I'm kind of a chatterbox, I remember thinking that he wasn't quite right and that I shouldn't engage him more than I needed to.
And how long was that before the
It was
shootings?
probably like, it was in the winter, the previous winter. So maybe December, January of 22, 23.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you for
Toby.
coming. What?
Get your hand up.
I'm sorry. I want to thank you for coming. You're very brave, and as is everybody else who's speaking here today. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I heard you refer to yourselves as survivors. I think that's sort of piecing out victims and survivors. It's all kind of a jumbled thought in my head. But do you feel like, as a survivor, that help reached out to you? I know your friends have, when you sort of relied on each other, but would you have any recommendations for how to improve, or the assistance that might have been offered to you at the time?
Well, and I feel like some of the assistance wasn't offered to me directly. A lot of it I actually heard from Danielle. She was kind of a mastermind of we have a group conversation, and she was amazing in helping to keep everybody informed. And even, she had gotten an advocate first, which I think that they tried to get the people who had a spouse that was injured or hit by the gunman an advocate first. And I reached out to her, which is Joanne, and she's been incredibly helpful. And along the way, anybody who has needed any assistance, we've been able to kind of point them towards her. And even if she wasn't able to help them, she was able to get them to a place of, getting some answers.
I applaud you reaching, sometimes I think the commission hearing sort of that distinction between survivors and victims and who gets services directly. But I'm glad that you were assertive and reached out. I'm glad for that. Thank you.
One quick question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
You're fine.
But you've heard how the commission has been listening to different testimony. You personally, and maybe through your conversation with your friends and stuff, what would you like us to do at the end? Like, what would be the goal? You hope this commission will come up for you.
I mean, in my mind, I hope I just never hear a story of something unfolding like this with so many warning signs ahead of it. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think law enforcement and first responders did amazing that night as far as coming in, and I'm sure it was a scary night for everybody involved. But it was kind of a little bit upsetting to hear some of the backstory to everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next is Mike Roderick.
I'd like to thank the commission for coming together. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to us. My name is Michael Roderick. My son, Jackson Roderick, and I were at Schmeggy's on 10/25/2023. That day changed my life forever. Change. The only benefit I have in writing this letter is hope for change. Where, though? So I ask you, how did we let this happen? How is it that a person diagnosed with a mental illness was allowed to roam around threatening people at will with no accountability? How did we drop the ball so badly? Who dropped the ball? Why weren't procedures followed? Do we need more laws, or do we need more support following through with the processes we already have in place? Do we have a checks and balance system? If Robert Card wasn't safe to carry a firearm at an army base, then why was he okay to roam around and continue to threaten society? Why did this horrible tragedy happen? There are too many signs to ignore. We turned our heads because we didn't want to deal with it. Now we have to deal with it for the rest of my life. Now 18 families have to deal with not having their loved ones here. Please hear and listen to my story. 10/25/2023. Unfortunately, I can remember that date better than my own birthday. That night started out great. Opening night for the Boston Celtics. My son Jack and I had joined a cornhole league at Schmeggy's. We were there playing cornhole like we had for the previous 7 weeks, with guys that had become our friends and girls. My son Jack is a quiet 18-year-old introvert. I was so proud of him for stepping out of his comfort zone and spending time with strangers, getting to know more people, and learning the game that I love. The people we played with had become like our brothers and sisters. Strangers at first, but now nearly 2 months later, we busted each other's chops and laughed as we played. Life lessons were learned and bonds were built. I had taken a selfie with Jack and I wearing our Celtics gear for opening night. I had posted it on Facebook and I tagged that I was at Schmeggy's with Jack. An hour later, I realized that that post I had shared put the fear of death into many of our friends. When word started to hit, there was a shooting in Lewiston. People circled back and realized we were there. We were there. For some people, the assumption was Jack and I were there, but we got out. The next 10 to 30 minutes felt like an eternity. The next few minutes felt like a lifetime, and for some it was. The first shots went off and nobody really reacted. There was a slight pause, then 2 more shots came almost immediately. At that point, everyone ran and screamed and hurried for cover. My son was 27 feet away from me. He was at that end, I was at this end, from the other end of the cornhole boards. As we were in the middle of the match, I was standing next to John when the shooter came in. Jack was against the back wall. I headed in that direction. I followed the people in front of me and ended up in a small utility room with about 6 people. "Where the F is my son?" Those are the exact words I screamed as I realized that Jack wasn't in the room with me. I left the room. I went to look for my son as shots continued to ring out. It didn't seem like they would ever stop. Pop, 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 pop. I worked my way out to where I could see Jack. I made eye contact with him. He was about 30 feet away from me. Open space between us and shots still going off. And we'd made eye contact. A huge blessing, and to this day a curse. A blessing because Jack knew where I was. A curse because I will never, for the rest of my life, get the vision out of my head of seeing my 18-year-old son hiding behind a 3-foot half wall, scared for his life, as a shooter was murdering our friends in front of our eyes. I worked my way back to the utility room, put my back against the wall, immediately noticed an electrical panel, saw a giant handle for the breaker box. I killed the power to the entire building. Within seconds, my son was in my lap, fortunate that he'd seen me and knew where to go. What I didn't realize was the shooter had made it all the way to Jack. The shooter was face to face with my son when he'd already went through his first 30-round magazine. As the shooter reloaded, it happened to me within seconds of when I killed the power. My son will probably never get the sound of Robert Card reloading out of his head or the face out of his memory. I know that I'll never be able to forget Jack's face at that moment. My only hope is that we can prevent others from having to suffer the nightmares and trauma that will plague us for the rest of our lives. So hopefully this commission can figure out who and where we dropped the ball and make sure that we learn from these horrible, tragic mistakes and share that information to teach others how to prevent this nightmare from ever happening again. Kind regards, survivor Mike Roderick, father of survivor Jackson Roderick. And yes, I can take any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
Thanks again for being here. How's the son doing?
My son acts like this day never happened, but he still sleeps with a light on. He's jumpy, but he pretends it didn't happen. So I'm afraid of what will happen in 10 years when the PTSD finally catches up to him.
Is he getting, has help been offered? And is
Help
that-
has been offered over and over again, and he did talk to Sarah, a victim advocate, who's been fabulous, but he doesn't talk.
How about for you?
Yep, I have received help, yep.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon that folks seek help at different time frame. I mean, it's great that you're able to initiate that, and you may be the example for him that he sees that his dad does something, and he may want to mimic that, and it may be one of those things where he may want to go with you just to see how, as gingerly as you want to do it, but so I think it's still early, but I'm glad you're getting something, that at least is a basis of something.
I want to thank you for coming and telling this extraordinary story. I also want to commend you for your quick thinking about turning off the electrical system. You saved a lot of lives that night.
Yes, you did. And did a victim witness advocate reach out to you, or were you sort of connected through somebody else?
How it worked for me was that I would never have reached out for help, and I'm stubborn like a lot of men. I had to go to the armory to get my gear that was left behind at Schmeggy's. And when I went to the armory, the FBI at that point had kind of forced you to sit with somebody and talk to somebody. And I'm like, I don't need that, I just want my gear. But my gear happened to not be available that day, and I'd driven down to Lewiston. I'm from South China, Maine. And so I sat with somebody. The one suggestion I would make, and I think the FBI made the same suggestion, was you put us back in the armory. When the FBI got together and the building that they used to have people come and talk to them was the same building that we were in a couple nights prior, the night of the shooting. Pick a different building. It was just a horrible plan right there. And so the FBI woman, whose also name was Sarah, was helpful. And then when she left, because they were only here for a short time, she handed me off to the second Sarah, who's here and fabulous.
We've heard the comment about the building and the impact of going back from several people.
Yeah.
That's acknowledged at this point, yeah. It's a very unbelievable experience that you've been through, and to listen to it is striking, really, all of you. Thank you very much. Yep, Jeff?
Were you interviewed by a police officer about what you saw?
Yes, Jack and I were both interviewed at the armory.
By what agency?
He was a sheriff from southern Maine. His name was Kenny. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. Sheriff from southern Maine, super guy.
Well, the reason I asked that is that fairly recently I thought there was the claim that they didn't know who shut off the power. And obviously, you shared that with somebody and it didn't get...
I made it pretty clear to a lot of people that I wasn't looking for any attention.
Yeah. Well, again, I congratulate you like Mr. Dilworth did as well. That was quick thinking under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Either Danelle or Donnell Grondin.
Danielle.
Danielle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, I don't have a tendency to be too super loud, so let me know if you can hear me okay. And thank you for being here. My name's Danielle Grondin, and I was at Just in Time Bowling Center on October 25th with my significant other, Sean. We'd been in a league there for about a year, but it was our first week back in months. We walked in and immediately went over to give Tommy Conrad a hard time. He was behind the bar with Justin. And as we walked over to our lane, our friend Trisha Aslan was walking right towards us. She stopped and gave Sean the biggest hug. He'd been in Africa for the prior few months and got stuck in a military coup, so everyone had been really worried about him. He had just gotten back. We were bowling on lane 10, which was the last lane of our league, the closest one to the entrance. Not the closest lane, the closest of our league. All the lanes between us and the door were the junior league, with the exception of 17 and 18, where Jason Walker and Mike Delorier were bowling with their significant others. There were so many kids, ages maybe 7 to 17. I had just sat down facing the main entrance with my hand on my beer when I heard what sounded like the loudest balloon pop I've ever heard. I've always hated balloons. I startle easily and they terrify me when they pop, so I definitely jumped at this noise. I looked across the table at Justin, who jumped up from where he was sitting. I think Sean was bowling. He's deployed again to Africa, so he can't be here to testify. There was a second pop, and I jumped up and found myself staring at a man with a very large gun. When he aimed in our direction, I saw a light on the end. The last gun I'd seen like that was at laser tag. I was just really confused. If you've never been to Just in Time, they have an arcade across from the bar. In my mind, it wasn't out of the realm of possibilities that this guy was shooting some weird laser tag gun. At that moment, it made more sense to me than what was actually happening. I stood there just staring at him for what felt like forever. In hindsight, it was probably 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. His gun jammed, so he had to point it down to clear it. That's when Jason and Mike ran at him. I didn't see this happen. I actually don't remember seeing anything peripherally. It's like my brain only allowed me to see him and his gun. The shooter was calm. He was so methodical for the time I watched him. He positioned himself perfectly for the job that he came to do, and he was eerily calm about it. In this moment, Sean lunged at me and yelled, "He has a gun, run." I dropped to the floor. My brain thought that if he was standing up shooting, I wanted to be on the ground. Sean grabbed my arm and yelled, "No, get the F up and run," and essentially pulled me down the hall and out the emergency exit. We were separated briefly by everyone trying to still fit out that door, but he turned back around, grabbed my hand, and pulled me across the parking lot. I didn't write this down, but when we were standing outside of the bowling alley, we could hear on the police scanner all the calls coming in, and one of them was the Walmart distribution center, where I don't think he actually went, but my two 20-year-old boys were working that night, and that's when I lost my mind. I learned a lot that night. Sean's 22 years in the Air Force saved my life and probably others. Mike and Jason absolutely gave us the time that we needed to escape. Kathy tells us to not feel guilty because Jason wouldn't want that, and to live our lives because he can't. But there's so much guilt and sadness there. I now assess every building I enter for emergency exits. If there aren't any visible, I don't go in. I know the only thing that could have saved us that night once he was in the building is if one of us had been carrying. There was time when the gun jammed to do something about it if we had had a gun. There were so many of us in there that night that might have normally been doing that, and I don't ever want to be in a position like that again. Obviously, there's one other thing that could have saved us all from that night, and it's really what's made me angry from the second I walked into Tommy Conrad's wake, because he was the first one buried, and it's kept me angry for the past 4 months. The shooter, and I know I should say his name here, but I still can't bring myself to, never should have been there. He never should have had access to those guns. He'd been screaming for help, literally telling people what he was going to do, applying for a silencer. He should have been stopped. I know what our yellow flag law states, and it should have been invoked. I'm not sure that only one agency or one department dropped the ball. I think multiple agencies did, multiple times. I think there were balls everywhere. Those 18 lives never should have been lost that night. I'm not particularly scared of death, but no one should have had to hide beneath tables or ball returns or run down hallways and through parking lots trying to escape gunfire. No one should have to bury multiple friends or family members because a man should have been getting help. Who should have been getting help was allowed to walk casually into Lewiston businesses with a gun. I'm grateful to be here tucking my son into bed every night. able to still tell my adult children how much I love them, but our lives will never be the same again. 16 and a half weeks later, and I still haven't gone a day without breaking down at some point. I haven't been able to eat regularly since the shooting. I don't sleep. When I do sleep, my 9-year-old wakes me up because he's having nightmares about shootings. I'm trying. We're all trying. He stole a lot from a lot of people that night, and someone needs to figure out how it was allowed to happen. I'm going to repeat something Kathleen Walker said to you. You need to find those holes and plug them. Please don't stop until the holes are truly plugged, so we don't need to do this again down the road. We don't need to bury more innocent people out having fun with their friends. Thank you.
Thank you. You and the folks that have come before you have really phrased the charge of the commission really quite well. You know, was the ball dropped and where was it dropped? And plugging the holes is a pretty powerful way of describing what the work that has been assigned to us is. We hope that we're capable of contributing to that in a meaningful way, and that's our goal. So thank you. And you've really impressed me. The gentleman that was just before you did the same thing in talking about dropping the ball. So are there other questions or comments?
Thank you so much for being here. I have a quick question. How did you find out that your older sons were safe and that the Walmart distribution center was sort of not an active shooting scene?
I actually found out, well, I heard it over the police scanner. I didn't have my phone. All my belongings were actually in the bowling alley until the following Monday. But I just started crying, and a stranger came over to hug me, and she let me use her phone, and I texted both twins. And after they had all been cleared by the police, they were allowed to have their phones, and one of them texted me back and told me they were on lockdown. Apparently they were on lockdown longer than we were. I got home before he did. But that's true. That same stranger, I still don't know who it was, came back and found me when they texted back like 10 or 15 minutes later and told me they were okay.
Question to ask you, I mean, like many individuals during an emergency and stuff, they start calling and stuff. Did you have problems with the phones that night? Like, was it texting was the only way to get through? People were like, oh, okay, I see it not. People weren't able to get through on the phones?
Both Sean and I left our phones inside. We actually ran to Subway, and a kid there let me use his phone to call somebody and
So
tell
you
them I
were
was
able to
okay.
actually call?
I called on this kid's cell phone from Subway.
Okay.
Our friends were on their phones back and forth talking.
Okay.
I don't know if they had problems, but it didn't seem like it. It seemed like they were able to get through.
Okay.
And your 9-year-old was not with
He was not. He begged to go that night. There was no chance I was bringing him. It's past his bedtime. Thank God.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to leave your comments with Ann, that would be appreciated. Next is Jennifer Zanka.
Hello.
Hi there.
Thank you for being here and doing everything you can to help with, as they say, plugging the holes. My name is Jennifer Zanka. I don't have anything written or prepared because I live it every day. It's just there in my memory. But I was at Schmenge's. I was with a group of 4 women who had been in a golf league at Fox Ridge. And they weren't serving anymore at the clubhouse. So we decided that we would go out. And it was my sister-in-law, Sue Dosty, had said that would be a good place to go because then our other friend Destiny could just get on the interstate and head home. So I have never been to Schmenge's before. It was my first time. And I was surprised at how full the parking lot was. What a popular place this is. And I think we were the only ones having dinner that night. We were sitting at a high top, close to the bar, and we ordered dinner. And we were just chatting, and my back was to the door. And I just heard this incredible noise, extremely loud. And I turned around, and I realized instantly what was going on, that there was a shooter. And I looked at the person to the left of me, Joyce, and their eyes were as big as saucers. And he was probably 15 feet, 20 feet from me. And I immediately just got down. And three of us went around the wall. But unfortunately, on the way, I was shot. And it felt like my arm had blown off. People ask me all the time, what did it feel like? Does it feel like a bee sting? No. It feels like an explosion. It felt like it just blew up. But I also don't remember, once I was shot, how I got around the wall and how I got into the kitchen. And I'm trying to piece that all together with other people's accounts of what happened. My neighbor Joyce said I army crawled with one arm, and I must have stood up somehow, and the next thing I knew, I was following Destiny, and I was in the kitchen, and the lights were out, and we were trying to find our way out the door, and I was holding my arm as hard as I could, like a tourniquet. I am a nurse, and I had some training. Ironically, years before this, I was a ski coach for the Paralympic Alpine team, and we got to meet all the victims of Combine, and then years later, the Oklahoma City bombings. They had ski programs for the victims or survivors, which I guess I'm both. But that night, somebody held the kitchen door open, and I made my way out the door, and Destiny, I thought, was going towards the front door, and I wasn't going to go anywhere near there. So I ran to the dumpster, which was by Alprin's, and I hid there, holding my arm, until I saw like a SWAT team, like a whole bunch of police cars, like just, I've never seen so many police cars in my life. And I ran out into the road, holding my arm. And my memories are spotty, and I have had some come back with my EMDR therapy. Recently, one that came back was standing in the middle of the road, feeling like a vulnerable child, like helpless, just helpless, standing there helpless, holding my arm. And then the next thing I know, they were like a SWAT team, and they just said, "Get down," and just sort of blew by me. And I was still standing there. But I didn't think I would survive. I thought I would bleed out. I didn't know, and I ran to a neighbor that was across the street, and I just said, "Help, help, I need help." And he just stuffed me in his car. He said I didn't say a word, which is unusual. But I was just holding my arm and breathing. That's all I could do was breathe, 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 just keep breathing. And we were going like 100 miles an hour. And the weird thing is, the one thing I do remember is he laid on his horn and he went through an intersection and some guy gave us the finger. And it's like imprinted in my brain. And in my head I'm thinking, "Sorry, dude, I'm in a hurry," you know. And there's lots of the hospital too. I have in and out of memory. He tossed me in a wheelchair and ran in the hospital with me, and I didn't know his name. I don't remember a whole lot. I didn't have time to grab my cell phone because apparently I was the second one shot, so he killed the guy at the bar, and then I was shot next. So it's not like I had time to grab my purse on the way out. And then with cell phones, everybody forgets telephone numbers because they're all on your cell phone, but I did have some in memory, so I called from the hospital line to my partner. But at that point in time, I didn't really know how the other girls were, and that's all I could think about. What happened to them? What happened to them? What happened to them? And then I called Dave, my partner, and he thought it was a prank call because it was a hospital line. And then he found his way, and they stood outside of the hospital for hours because everybody was in lockdown. And I was told I was the first one there, even before the bowling alley. So my experience being in the hospital for a couple of days, they did surgery that night. One of the doctors that came in was actually a doctor that I worked in the operating room with for like 6-7 years. And it was a familiar face. And I was just so happy to see someone that I knew and that I trusted. And then another doctor came in with him, Dr. Fallon and Dr. Engler. My first question was he old enough to do this? Because he's very young. He's 33 years old, and he did an amazing job at saving my arm. And I'll never have full function. I'm missing part of my arm. I have a plate and 12 screws in my arm. So when the weather comes in, I feel it. Can never really get dressed normally. I'll never be able to raise my arm like that. And the big question is will you be able to golf again? Everyone tries to stay positive and said I had too big a backswing anyway, so maybe it'll help. But I do want to say that the support from the community, the physicians that came in, just came in. They didn't have to come in, they came in. And they've been amazing support. You heard from Danielle earlier, she reached out, because the four of us didn't really know anybody at the cornhole. But I am right-handed, so I'm assured that I'd be invited to play some cornhole. And it is a new family for me. They've been really helpful, reaching out and including. As far as mental health support, it took a little while for me to get there because I was just physically healing. But my daughter, she dropped everything to come stay with me. And she had had a traumatic brain injury a year prior and had EMDR therapy. And I knew that was what I had to do because it was the most effective therapy that she had during that time. I was so amazed at how helpful that was for her. So he offered right away to help me as well. So I've been going. It's actually in Kennebunkport, but I go every Monday. And then I do my physical therapies. And then I go to the Resiliency Center, and we have a group there. And we share our experiences. And every time someone tells me their experience, I relive it, but I'm just in awe of what people have gone through. And I'm most sad about all the people that lost their lives because we still get to be here. I still get to go to my daughter's wedding. I still get to do. It's never going to be the same. And having worked with people with disabilities, you just learn to live with it, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time to get to that point where you can sit in a restaurant and not be terrified, things like that. And if there's anything I could say or do or answer that could help in any way in this process, that's why I'm here. Because I don't want to see it happen again.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for?
Thank you again for being, for getting to this. Thank you again for being here. Has anyone been helping you to navigate through all the, paperwork, bureaucracy to get the services you need?
Yes, because I was hospitalized, they came to my house.
Who's they?
There was a group of people. There was Courtney, who's a victim's advocate from Lewiston. There was a Homeland Security, somebody from Washington, and an FBI. I never heard from the Homeland Security again, but I've been working through the victim group that they've been reaching out to me, and then I reach out to the other people that maybe they didn't hear from them, because I think it was a bit overwhelming. For the number of people that were involved, I guess, is, you maybe know the numbers, maybe over 100 altogether, and these advocacy, they have other jobs too. So I think it took a little time to get that coordinated, but it seems like it's come together now.
Okay.
And were you working as a nurse at the time?
No.
No.
I had retired, and my daughter was working for a medical supply company called OrthoFix. And after she had her car accident and traumatic brain injury, I helped her do medical fittings for fractures. It's a little prophetic. So I have a unit that I wear 3 hours a day that helps bones to heal. My humerus was shattered, so the last time I went and they took x-rays, they were quite surprised at the fact that it's actually knitting together. And then Dr. Adie said to me that it was a testament of all those years of good living. And I asked her, I guess my check liver light hasn't come on yet, as a joke. But so I think the device helps, and I'm doing everything I can to heal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Do you folks, no, excuse me, not for you. The ASL interpreters, do you need 5 minutes?
We would really like to have a break.
Right. So I think we will take a 5 or 10 minute break to give the interpreters a chance to rest up a little bit. They're working harder than all of us, and so let's make it 10 minutes. He's turning it on, I believe. Yeah, we're on. Okay.
Sorry, just a minute, please.
Oh, 1 minute.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're set.
I can.
The next person is Steve and Heather Kretlau.
Hello, my name is Steve Richards. This is Heather Richards, my wife. I'm a deaf survivor of the mass shooting at Schmenge's, October 25th, 2023. The group of deaf people who were playing together cornhole, I joined them in the fall of that year. My friends and I arrived around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we were standing around talking, sharing the news, you know, doing the catch-up thing. We were having a really good time and laughing and learning from each other and playing cornhole. It was my turn to toss in the game, but I was standing at a table talking to two other friends. And all of a sudden, this loud noise felt like something in the kitchen exploded. I stood up at my table and looked to see what was happening and saw a gunman. I told my friends, run, run, hide, be safe. And everybody scattered. I could feel the vibrations of the gun going off everywhere. I ran to the back door from my table. While I was running, I was shot in the leg. I couldn't move, so I dove under a table and pretended I was dead. Another survivor hid under the table right next to me. We got a chair and blocked the gunman from seeing us. My friend who was close to me got shot several times while we were under the table. I didn't count how many times, but he kept shooting him. I couldn't see the shooter's face because the lights went out. I felt like I was there under the table forever. When the police finally arrived, they had little flashlights, and so the flashlights started showing up and roaming around the room. I was trying to look and see what was happening and saw the hole through my pants when one of the officers approached me and said, "Do you need to see a doctor? Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not okay. I was shot. I was afraid and I didn't know what was happening." My leg was bleeding profusely. and I wanted to check on my friend. I did survive. My friend kept yelling, "Help me, help me." And then someone helped me get up and get to the ambulance on one leg, just kind of hopping. We left the building, and the officers there were all talking, and we're trying to figure out which people should go to the hospital. And they asked me about going to MCC. I said, "Can I go with my friend?" And they said, no, I couldn't. And then told me that St. Mary's was on lockdown. So then I got in the ambulance and rode to the hospital. I informed my wife that I had been shot and about the shooting in St. Mary's emergency room. And I let them know that I'd been shot, that I was deaf, and I needed an interpreter. They put me in a bed, and they took off my garments that were in the way. And there was a big hole, and it was bleeding a lot. Then they brought me a VRI screen. It was just a screen with a person on it. And I said, no, I don't understand that well enough. I need an interpreter, an actual live person. So there was no communication because this system, VRI, it just keeps disconnecting in the middle of signs, and they didn't know our local signs. Those interpreters are national interpreters, so they don't know our local signs, and they didn't know what I was trying to say, and she couldn't catch up, and I was so frustrated. And they just kept using VRI, and I was missing most of every conversation. It was like I was missing 80% of what was being said. And so I said, I need an interpreter in live person to come here. And finally around midnight, there was an ASL interpreter, and said the officer wanted to talk to me about the shooting. I went to the operating room before I talked to the officer, so I had to go there and have my legs stitched up and all of that. And then the officer came to my room. I guess it was about 1:30, and I was able to see my wife, and the hospital, excuse the interpreter, that was a misinterpretation. I was not able to see my wife because the hospital was locked down. And finally, she was able to come in, and I just cried, and I definitely felt like a survivor. I was in so much grief and pain, and I was grieving for my friends that I'd just lost. My leg was all wrapped up, and I had to use a walker for a while. I wasn't released from the hospital until 4, and I was so afraid. There was military people and guards and police all over the hospital, and I was still afraid. So they put me in a wheelchair and let me meet my wife outside to go home. And then I saw the news and learned about my friends the next afternoon. Both deaf and hearing friends of mine were gone. Until November, I was just basically in shock. I went to funerals, but my leg hurt so much it was hard for me to be involved with everything. So my friends and I processed the loss of all of our other friends. It was about 6 weeks later I was able to go back for a recheck. And they sent me to the center about my leg. Apparently I got an infection. So they had to do surgery and do a really deep clean out of the wound, which started me back at the beginning. I think it was another 4 weeks that I didn't even recover. I'm so traumatized, and forever I'll have this huge scar to remind me that I'm a survivor and my friends weren't. Of that awful situation that happened at Schmenge's. I'm still able to enjoy my family and my children and my life. And I know I'm not the only one that was scarred by this. The contacts from Winthrop and from the victims advocacy were tremendous. The deaf interpreters and the ASL users or other deaf people was tremendous. But we've all grieved. We've lost 4 of our great friends. There should have been something done to prevent this. It sounds like the military, the police officers, many people were warned that this was coming. There was many red flags. I don't understand why the police didn't take his guns from him, so he was not a danger to others. I think that we need a lot more training about mental health issues. I would like to see access at the hospital to interpreters improve. A real live interpreter, not a machine. Someone who can use the different types of sign language and our local sign language so that people who are injured so badly can have access to communication during that awful time. I'm not the only one that struggled to communicate during this crisis. And I think there should be some training of medical staff and police staff how to deal with a deaf person. So that get faced with a first responder and they're not shocked and confused at how to communicate with you. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream that all deaf and hearing people will be brothers and sisters and be strong." It's a horrible thing that we lost over 18 people in all of this. And I just want you to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you. That's my only word this gentleman taught me. I'll work on some more. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you. And also, you know, as you were speaking, I was taking notes, and so many of the things you recommended pertained to the questions I was about to ask you, like how did the first responder, when you're still at Schmenge's, communicate with you and you to him or her? And I think I take your recommendations to heart. So I'm just wondering how you were able to communicate in that moment that the first responders got there.
That's a difficult question to answer, actually. It was very hard. There was a very large barrier between us, and they didn't understand me. They were not used to working with a deaf person, so they were kind of in shock, and I have no answer.
Heather, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
Okay. Were you at home when you heard the news?
Yes, I was home with our children.
Okay. So while you were worrying about Steve, the whole place was still in lockdown at the point people didn't know if the shooter was still around. How were you able to get to the hospital, and how, was there anyone who could help you get there? Because obviously you had to work your way to the hospital.
My husband texted me what happened, that he was at the hospital. I had somebody close by who could help me with the children, so I asked them to help, and then I drove to the hospital. But as you said, it was on lockdown. So I went to another friend's house who lived close to the hospital, and we were texting with my husband. And we were asking him all these questions, what was going to happen next, and was he going to be in surgery, but we had to text. And we informed him that we couldn't come in, that we were there, but we couldn't come in. They wouldn't let us in.
So when you went to the hospital, did they have a translator to assist in speaking with you? Or basically they use a virtual iPad thing too? Or no one talked to you?
When I arrived at the hospital, I was very nervous, and the military was everywhere with big guns blocking the entrance. I walked up to someone at the back, and there was an interpreter right there at the door.
Okay.
So my friend and I went over and used the interpreter, and that's when they finally let me come in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is more a comment, I think, than anything else. But when you were in Schemenges and he was still firing, you've told us that you could feel the vibration of the shots, which to me is the shock wave of the discharge of a gun this powerful. And this kind of testimony
Well, it was not really so much the vibrations from the gun shooting, but from the bullets flying around and hitting things. So I could feel that vibrations of things being hit.
I see. We hear what people sometimes first sense is a pop, which is a gunshot, and that makes it sound almost quiet. And I think what you're communicating to us is the violence of the gunfire.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Chris Dindwick. Probably mispronouncing. And I wasn't leaning in to the mic, so I'll repeat it again. Chris Dundwick.
Hello, my name is Chris. I was there at the bar with my friends, 9 of us. We were enjoying the evening, playing cornhole, practicing, when I heard a loud pop or bang. It was really a bullet ricocheting. When I looked and saw Richard. I didn't know the bar well. It was only the second time that I went there. There was a board beside me that I was able to flip up and hide behind. I could see my friends army crawling across the floor, and Richard Card came right up to them and shot them lots of times. It looked like he was about to turn to me when his gun got jammed, so he had to take the magazine out. When he did that, I ran past him, and I could hear him firing more times. I ran, but I felt like he was going to hit me in the back at any minute. My car was parked outside, so I went and hid by the car. Then I got in the car, and I thought, I left my friends. So I drove back where I was and parked and saw my friends one of my friends laying at the front door, just laying there. But I ran to him, but he was gone. And then somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and it scared me, and I was terrified. It was that Richard Card again, but it wasn't. This person, I understood them to say that he was gone. And I tried to help my friend, but he had a big hole blown in his neck and shoulder. And then the police arrived, but only one And I ran to that police person and said, "We need an ambulance, my friend." And they said, "No, we have to look at other people as well." And I lost my mind. I called some other friends, told them about Schmeggy's, and they told me about the bowling alley. And that's when I realized that we were the second group hit. And then police just all started arriving. But my friend died by then, which was hard for me to explain. The police officers and the ambulance just kept coming in and out of the building, in and out and in and out, until like midnight, 1 o'clock. And then finally things calmed down. That night impacted me so devastatingly. And now when I go in someplace, I have to look for an exit. Every time I hear a loud noise or feel a loud vibration, it scares me. I can't sleep at night. My friend is gone. 4 of my friends are gone. I keep thinking about the kids that no longer have a parent. It has impacted me so badly. I think that's what I wanted to say. Is there any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions?
Have you been able to access some help dealing with the trauma?
I was offered counseling, but I haven't gone. I hate talking about this at all. It makes me emotional and angry. So I've informed my closest family and friends of what happened.
Are you working right now?
Yes.
How has this impacted your work, if it did?
Yes, it has impacted my work because I work in a very noisy place.
Thanks. Thank you.
I know this has been difficult for you and that you don't enjoy doing it, but we really appreciate you coming here today and telling us your story.
Thank you.
Next is Kyle Curtis, excuse me. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Kyle. I'm a survivor. I was there that night. It was an awful experience for me and everyone else. For me, I was playing cornhole. I was having a good time, wonderful fellowship with my friends. And just as I finished and went and sat down at the table to talk with some other friends, Okay, the manager told us there was a sub that was going to take over, and there was a sub that was needed, so asked me if I could join this other team. The manager asked me if I could join an older couple because one of them had to leave, one in their team had to leave. So I went and switched positions with that person that had to leave. I was done with my game. So we were figuring out with the new couple, my new team and everything, but I went over to talk to my friends for a second, let them know what was happening when the shooter came in. I felt the vibrations in the bar. The glasses at the bar shattered, and I was confused. I saw the bullets coming out of the gun. I could see the flashes in the muzzle, and I could see people falling. So I got down. I went under a table and decided I needed to get out of the building. I could see a doorway in the back. So I crawled to the doorway. My friend was behind me, crawling behind me, and they shot him, or he shot him, and I was able to get out. And a fragment, not a bullet, but a fragment of something hit me in the side. I was able to get out. And I felt kind of funny because I felt all warm and wet on my side. So I looked and a fragment had hit me. A woman called 911 from where I was, and they took off my shirt and tied up the injury on my arm. And I was just kind of in shock. I couldn't see any of my deaf friends anywhere. No one was coming out. And that scared me. I could only see hearing people. I waited and waited, and finally the police arrived. And I followed the group of people who could hear, or hearing people, over to talk to them. And one of my hearing friends could kind of communicate with me because he knew and understood I was deaf. And so he was gesturing with me and sharing with the cop what had happened. And the officer looked at my arm and told me and two of my other friends to go to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, I went in a room and they gave me a VRI machine, video relay interpreter, which is lousy and just keeps cutting off so that you only see half a sign and you miss half the sentence. they decided it was so bad there in that room, they moved me to a different room with a VRI connection. We moved to the new room, and it was worse there than it was before. 6 rooms. They switched interpreters 6 different times on the VRI system to find somebody who could understand me. And I was very frustrated trying to explain things over and over with all of the disconnects. And I said, I need an ASL, American Sign Language Interpreter. And at that point, I learned that the interpreters were there, but they wouldn't let them in. And I was very frustrated with the video relay interpreting because it just is not successful. I was very upset and angry. I couldn't sleep. I lost my friends. The whole thing, I just feel like, is so sad. After a few days, I was still in shock. I think maybe it was about a week I was in shock. And I went to the armory, and they gave me some information, and that was able to help me some. And they provided interpreters there. So I didn't feel alone and left out. And that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. At least I gather that there's a real need for reviewing the VRI machine, which I've never, or the VRI process, which I've really never had any exposure to, and
Yeah, you're right.
we will pursue that.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
I just have a quick, very quick comment, and that is that what strikes me is, you know, you go through this incredible trauma, and then the gaps and lapses and problems with communication just compounds it. And so it's like, I don't know what the right word is, but it definitely magnifies the horrible experience that you had.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
So it sounds like the deaf community is very tight-knit because they were doing these social activities to kind of just be there. Have you folks, and this probably go to all of you as well, been able to continue doing some of that to help yourself heal?
Yes, we still do many deaf activities. It is a small community, so we are tight-knit. Cornhole, League has some hearing people and some deaf. And it does feel a lot like a family.
Have you used the VRI system outside of the hospital setting?
Yes, sometimes doctor's appointments, check-in. If it's just, a quick check-in for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, then it's fine. But when you have to be at a place where you're injured, a real, live, conscious person is the best interpreter.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today.
Wait.
A comment for Mr. Curtis, but for all of you today, is that we can read witness statements and police reports, and understand the outline of what happened. But having you communicate to us what you experienced is what makes this, the horror of what happened, so vivid. And I appreciate all of you coming in to talk to us today.
All right. Thanks very much.
Next is Richard Morlock. Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, that's it.
My name is Richard Morlock. I'm in the Cornhole League. I hang out with the deaf people there. At Schmenge's bar. That night was a big impact. Of course, we didn't expect it to happen. I was sitting in the corner and I couldn't escape. And I heard all of the popping of the bullets flying. And I was kind of frozen. Then it hit the wood right in front of me, and the wood just disintegrated. And the wood pieces, fragments, came up and hit me. So I decided to lay down and pretend I was dead. So I just laid there. I was too scared to do anything else. I just tried to go limp and look dead. I could still hear the shooting. I heard when he changed the magazine. And I felt him getting closer and closer to me. He was shooting people that were already on the floor. I could feel and hear the pops of the gun. And I was just trying so hard to stay looking like I was dead. He didn't shoot me, but he shot a bunch of people on the floor on his way over. I heard a click when his gun jammed, and I saw Chris run past him. I saw him run right past him, and then the lights went off. But I could see through the light coming in through the doorway. I saw him go out through the door, but I was still in the corner, and I just waited for the police to get there. And then I realized we were safe, so I got up. There was blood everywhere, friends everywhere. Next to me, Steve asked if I was okay. He was shot. I got my phone, put on my jacket, and left. Got on my motorcycle, but I became very dizzy and disoriented. They took me to the hospital, but I only stayed like an hour, and I had an interview. And they gave me first aid for where the splinters had hit me in the arm and in the side. After about 2 hours, I went home. It was late, but I couldn't sleep. 3 hours later, I got up, and I was still dizzy. I think it was 24 hours later before I finally calmed down. That week, my deaf friends, these are all my friends, we communicated back and forth, talked about what happened, and we just got closer than we ever were before. And now it's been like 4 months. And I think we are as tight as a family could be.
Are there any questions for Mr. Pardon? Oh.
Four of my close friends are dead. So I put it on my arm, a heart. I understand 14 other people were killed as well. So I put a memorial on my arm to remember it by.
Anything further?
Yes, I'm all done.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
I just want to say I'm very glad that you're here together and that you're together.
I've noticed as testimony from all the people that have testified today that you folks in the front row nod your assent, your agreement, sort of like looking when you're in when I was in court as a judge, I would look over at times and you'd see jurors sort of nodding in agreement. They understood. It sort of adds something to the testimony when you see people saying, yes, that's the way it was. And all of you have done that. In court, we try to discourage it, but here it's a good thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Destiny Johnson.
Good morning, my name is Destiny Johnson. Thank you. Good morning, my name is Destiny Johnson. I was at Smengi's Bar and Grill on October 25th, 2023. My three friends and I played a round of golf at Fox Ridge Golf Course in Auburn that night before we planned to go to Smengi's. We all agreed to go to Smengi's as it was a close location for the girls and easy for me to get on the highway. The four of us left Fox Ridge Golf Club and met each other at Smengi's. As soon as I saw the building, I knew I wasn't going to fit my truck in that parking lot because the parking lot was really packed. Instead, I decided to pull up on the curb by the side door on the left next to the entrance of the building. Us four girls walked through the front door and sat down at the table against the wall across from the front door. I sat in the chair against the wall facing the front door, so I instantly saw Robert Card walk in. We ordered a drink and 2 apps. The waitress came out with our drinks, and shortly after, with one of our apps. We all shared an app, and as soon as we were done with one, the other one came out. We started eating the second app and ordered pizza. Shortly after taking a couple bites of the stuffed potato puff, the shooter walked inside the bar directly in front of where we were sitting. My friend Jennifer was sitting directly in front of me. My other two friends, Joyce and Susie, were sitting to the right and left side of me. With no expression on his face, he looked up in the air, did something to the gun, and fired up to the ceiling. He brought the gun back down, did something to it, and then proceeded to fire again up in the air. He brought it back down, proceeded to do something to the gun, and shot once more in the air. Then he brought the gun back down, did something to the gun again, and that's when I heard someone say, "Get down." As soon as I was on the ground under the table, I saw him point the gun towards us girls and then shot. I started crawling to my right and under and through chairs. Every time he stopped, I stopped crawling. Or every time he shot, I stopped crawling. I had at least a second or two to crawl while he messed with his gun in between each shot. After 3 shots, I was able to crawl into the back room that was dark, and I knew I couldn't get out of. Then I got up and I ran into another dark room through the kitchen. I saw my friend Jennifer standing there looking for a way to get out just like I was. At this point, I couldn't hear anything. My ears were still ringing. And then I yelled to Jennifer and told her to follow me as I saw the back door open through the kitchen. A guy was standing there holding the door for us. It looked like he worked in the kitchen with a black apron on. I didn't look back, and I saw my truck as soon as the guy opened the door, sitting there on the curb where I parked it on the side of the building. I booked it to my truck, hit the button on the handle, and the door opened. Thankfully, my key fob was still attached to my pants after crawling through each room, and I was able to start my truck and call 911. I called at 7:08. I was on the phone with 911 as I slammed my truck into gear and took off. 911 hung up on me after telling me they already knew what was going on. How comforting was that? I then called John, my boyfriend, and then shortly after that, my son Jacob. I was in a panic and drove straight until I saw the signs for the highway. I thought for sure the shooter was following me, and he was, until I veered left towards the highway. I never let go of my napkins that I was holding in my left hand until I was parked in the driveway located in Wyndham. After being shot at, I'm refusing to be another victim and taking the responsibility of being my own first responder. Unfortunately, the system and policies here in Maine failed all of us. The policies put in place now are not allowing us Mainers to be able to defend ourselves by stepping into a gun-free zone like Smengies. 94% of mass public shootings are in gun-free zones. Asking us to be defenseless for your perceived safety clearly leaves us all in danger. What happened to us in Lewiston will happen again here in Maine. We already had a system in place to arrest Robert Card before the shooting in Lewiston. The system was not used. The yellow flag law that they promised that would save lives was also not used. What's the sense of having the state of Maine having a yellow flag law when they never enforced it to begin with? We need to realize Robert Card already had these weapons. The U.S. Army deemed him to be such a risk that it forbade him from having weapons, handling ammunition, or participating in shooting drills while on military duty. But the Army's safeguards did not carry over to the civilian world, as the military was not required to invoke state laws that exist to protect the public. What's more is people knew Robert Card's erratic behavior, and Card continued to own guns, despite his delusions, paranoia, threats against other people, and an Army Reserve facility in Saco in the months before the mass shooting. On May 3rd, a citizen assist complaint originating from a local public school address was logged with Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. In July 2023, Card was admitted to the mental health facility in New York and spent 14 days in the hospital. It is well documented that Card acted violently and even assaulted a fellow soldier. In September 2023, weeks before the shooting, police received a request from the Maine National Guard to do a welfare check on Robert Card. The reality of this tragedy is that there were signs for a year leading up to the shooting that Card was violent. He made threats and acted violently. Prior to the shooting, Card allegedly committed several serious crimes, but he was not charged. Why not? Repeatedly, Card showed serious signs of danger, and his behavior was largely ignored. We need to ask why the Army didn't ask police or district attorney in New York to start the court process to potentially take Card's personal weapons that they gave him. It appears that they did not. We need to address the mental health issue here in Maine. We need to ask the Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs Administration, and all of the police in Maine, why didn't you do your job to protect us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've raised a number of questions which the commission has heard evidence on and will studying, and we'll attempt to respond in an appropriate manner. So thank you for coming. Are there other questions or comments?
No, thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Andrew Chassie. Welcome, and we'd be pleased to hear from you.
All right. My name is Andrew Chessie. I would like to thank you all for hearing us speak today. I understand the importance of this commission, and I hope me sharing today can shed the light on what we went through the night in October. I was at Smaggy's that evening. I was playing cornhole. I've been playing cornhole at Smaggy's for over 6 years. I would sometimes be there 2 to 3 nights a week. Smaggy's was like a second home for me, and the league members were like extended family to me. We were on week 6 of a 10-week session. There were 21 teams participating this session. My partner and I were in the middle of our second game on the evening when all hell broke loose. We were playing cornhole on court 4, which is located just after the half wall and the furthest point from the front entrance. A loud bang went off at the front of the bar, followed by multiple pops and people yelling, "Gun, get down," people yelling, swearing, mass confusion. I dove to the ground behind the half wall next to the opening, where I could see the man moving rapidly down the middle of the bar and shooting people as he moved. Sorry, technical difficulty. People were running and ducking, and I chose to play dead. Kelly tried to go over the half wall to get to her husband. I quickly pulled her down and grabbed a cornhole board and held it over my head with our legs sticking out the side. During this time, the power had gone out, and now all we could see was the image of him in the green laser. And everywhere that green dot went, a bullet went. The shooter continued to move towards the cornhole area in the half wall. Once he made his way through the opening in the half wall, I closed my eyes under the board and thought to myself, this is it. As we could feel the debris and whatnot hitting the board, soon he would make his way out through the pinball room, but at that time we had no idea he had left, other than the fact the gunshots had stopped. It was at this point the sounds that I still can't get out of my head, the sounds of multiple people in agony. To me, it sounded like cows in a heifer barn. This felt like an eternity. We didn't know if it was safe to move. We laid still until we heard LPD. We moved the board, and Kelly went towards the front, and I continued to help people that were wounded in the general area. I assisted the officers in getting people who needed medical attention out. I was checking pulses. I held a light from my phone while another cornhole, cornhole player removed his shoelace to tie a tourniquet on Ben's arm. My main focus at that point was to get people out and not focus on the ones that we had already lost. I remember I remember walking out after stepping over multiple people who did not make it and standing outside on the front entrance to the vision of the most emergency vehicles I had ever seen in one spot. The parking lot was completely chaotic. Nobody knew what was going on, including law enforcement. They were not sure if he was still on the grounds, and multiple reports were coming in that he was in different spots all over the city. Nobody knew what was going on, so for our safety, they moved everybody that was still in the parking lot by ambulance to the Lewiston Armory. It was at the Armory that they had released on social media that the person they were looking for was Robert Card. I remember looking down on my phone along with several other people, and we all determined that we knew who he was, and he used to be part of our cornhole family. I spent days without sleep, glued to the TV, waiting for him to be found. When he was found, I felt relieved, but still confused as to what really happened. So many questions, so many emotions. I've been seeing a therapist, and I'm going to group therapy, but my life has changed, constantly on edge and constantly checking my surroundings. I'm getting better, but I feel this event will always be with me. I went to more funerals in 1 month than one can imagine. I find myself thinking about this pretty much daily, and I think about my friends we lost. More so, I think about the spouses and the families of the ones who didn't come home that night, and how close my wife and daughter came to losing me. So today, I speak to you in hopes that you will find answers for all of us. Give us clarity and give us accountability. Most of all, I hope and pray that this commission will gather enough information from all of our testimonies that will fix our system in a way that can prevent this senseless act from happening again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a powerful message you've delivered to us. I hope that we're capable of living up to it in part, at the very least, and that we can all take a step towards saying we've done something to prevent this from happening again. What you folks have been through has been beyond belief. So, are there other questions, comments?
So, how well did you know Robert Card from the league?
Over the years, I'd say he's been around in multiple different places, besides Smaggy's and some of the other cornhole venues. I didn't know him that well. I played against him a few times, maybe even partnered up with him in blind draws. But I never really noticed anything too off about him. And in a way, I like to add that that's the scary part of this whole situation, is we don't always know what's going on in somebody. And I mean, I didn't know really much about him up until we started hearing about him, you know. So yeah, I didn't have a real relationship with him or anything like that, but just know that how scary it can be to know that someone in our own group like broke trust and you know, fired at people we all love and care about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say, sorry, thank you. But also, I am struck by the presence of mind. Again, you've just gone through this horrible, you know, sort of all these shots being fired, whizzing around you, and and when he's finally left, you know, to render aid to people who, you know, were injured next to you, and to, you know, really be that, the first of first responders, really. I want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Following up on that, sir, do you have any emergency medical training?
I don't. I'm
You're
just
just
a
doing it from
average
basic
Joe.
understanding?
No military background, no medical standpoint or nothing. I'd like to say what happened that night was some of us just did. And that's the term I use. I just did. I mean, didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. And I was one of the last people to walk out of there that night. And I remember asking one officer if it was okay for me to leave, because if there was any more that I could do, is basically what I asked. And then I left, and that was it. But I didn't realize what kind of impact I really did that night until days later. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops.
Just one thing, yeah, so I kind of echo what Jeff's comment is. I think I hear many of you talk about feeling the guilt that, you hear talking to us, some friends weren't able to do that, but at the same time, it's also important to hear that a lot of people are able to do stuff because of what you all did. Different things that, spontaneously with no training whatsoever. So that's a very powerful piece about how you all responded, because really you're the first responder before anyone got there, and you saved a lot of folks, like the lights going off, bandaging, tourniquets. I mean, it's just amazing work. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tori Patterson.
Hey. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry if I'm very nervous.
If you can stay close to the mic.
Okay.
And keep your voice up, it'll be helpful.
Okay.
Don't be nervous if you can help it.
I am. It's not easy for me to come up here and speak. I'm not one to be very open. That night, like many nights, I was getting ready for work. I work at Schmenge's. I was assistant manager, bartender, server, did everything there. I think I was working on, I had another person working with me that night. It was just me and her. I had her be the main bartender that night, and I was serving the cornhole players, the tables. I was kind of everywhere that night. And I was just coming in off the floor, and I was doing something, and you hear this loud, unbelievably loud bang. I look up, and I see him, the shooter, and I see a lot of smoke. And I'm kind of just frozen, looking at him, and I see another shot. I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't happening right now. And still just standing there, frozen, like not even moving. And he takes another shot at a person. So I'm like, okay, he just shot somebody. This really is happening. Because at first I'm like, okay, he's not coming to the bar. He's not trying to rob the place. He's not walking towards the bar. And then I'm like, okay, he started to take steps towards the back. Does he know where our safe is? Like, I'm thinking, is this a robbery? But I'm still just frozen in my steps. And once he shot that person, like, okay, he's here for something else. And then he keeps shooting, keeps taking steps towards the back. My coworker grabs me and says, Tori, we have to leave. And I didn't move. She grabs me again, she's like, Tori, we have to run. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have got out of there.
And we're going out the back door, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, I can't leave these people. I can't leave everybody. And she's like, Tori, keep going. We go out the back door. We run up the street. We keep hearing shots. And I'm thinking, like, he's still gonna come after us. There's no way he's gonna let anyone get out of there alive. And I'm just thinking, I'm not going home to my family tonight. I'm not going home to my son tonight. And like most people, they didn't think they were getting out of there that night. And most people have said, like, they lost a lot that night. I feel like almost like a piece of me is lost. So many great friends. And it's not like that place was just a job. I lost a job, but it was like home to me. And I loved going to work. Most people don't say they loved going to work. I loved going to my job. And we created a fun community at Schmenge's where everyone became close friends, like family to each other. The manager, Joe, that lost his life there that night, he would want to see Schmenge's go on. He put his whole heart into that place. The community would want us to see us go on in a new place. And that's what I'm hoping for. It's like, I know I can't control what happens. I can't control when I randomly have breakdowns. But I'm hoping we can control Schmenge's moving on. I'm hoping we can help do something with the business being helped. I'm hoping we can come together as a community and help the business move on.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Tori, thank you for being here. I think you raised something that I was kind of thinking along as I'm doing this hearing, many of us. We talk about just-in-time Schmenge as places. These are not places. These are community institutions, and it's like no different from many of us going to Uncle Bob's house kind of thing like that, because it's that family feeling. So I want to kind of really emphasize that we recognize that this is not just two scenes. These are actually places that's really meaningful to the community. The other thing too, how long have you been at Schmenge's now?
4 years.
4 years. One of the things I want to emphasize as well too, sometimes, I hear different, all of you talking about how you've been trying to work out what happened and then things like that. Sometimes what we see often in these situations is not just the event, but also past stuff that people have gone through. Like if you were a soldier who went through some trauma in overseas deployment, this could be the thing that set it off as well too. So I think it's important to understand that these events is not, everyone focus on it, but it's not just the event that could happen. It's the totality of a person's experience that may come back and make it distressful, which is why it's so important to get the help and be open to it. So, but I really want to, I think you're the first one I think we talked to in terms of actually from Schmenge's. And I think it's important to really emphasize that, what a family place that is and things, so.
Yeah, I feel like just the business has just been overlooked a little bit, that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Jason Barnett.
Is this going to be loud enough? All right.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and the board, for hearing me, and I have a lot to say. I'm a retired military. I was there at Schmenge's Bar, and currently DOD employee. And first thing I'd like to say is my heart goes out to the families that Spare time and Smeggies that lost somebody, and my heart goes out to the people that were wounded at both places, and it takes a toll on you, first of all, because just losing somebody in a situation like that where it could have been prevented, and I know you guys have a very difficult job, so I mean, I would like to ask you guys questions, because, you know, we're trained in the military, see something, say something. See something, say something. Who's at fault here? People did say something. It was missed. It was ignored. So why do we see something, say something? That's the first question you need to ask yourselves. Because who dropped the ball? Was it Saginaw? Was it the Army National Guard? Was it the facility out in Albany? You know, to see something, say something. These people here today were saying, fill the hole. Well, you answer that question, you're gonna fill the hole. And earlier today, I saw you, Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Say, victim, survivor, and you were like, well, I'm a survivor of the situation. I'm a victim of the people who dropped the ball. You see what I'm saying? And I'm getting a little nervous here. But all these people behind me, I got to know them, and they're really good people, all of them. I can't count for the people at spare time, but hearing these people talk today, they're all wonderful people. My history with Robert Card, he was my partner a few times at other venues. He was my partner at Smeggies a couple times. He's the one that told me about this place. And because I used to go to Farmington to play cornhole and over in Farmington, but this is on my way to work. And this has really affected me a lot because the way I go to work was the route that he goes, where his car was found in Lewiston. I take the back way, that's where he lives, on the way to Bath. So if you don't think my to and from way home that I don't think about this, it's really messed up. But '06 was really a hard time because at time of night, because that's when it started. My partner John and Petroselli and Jeannie were there. She was watching her husband play. He's the one who invited me to the league. And we were on court 5, and we heard the big bang. And then it just continued to go. And being in the military, you would think that I would have done something. I get annual training for the last 13 years, active shooter training. You know, the fight, flight, or freeze. Well, we didn't really freeze because everybody in the back corner melted to the ground as the shots got louder and louder and closer as he was walking his way through. We literally melted to the floor. But I wasn't gonna lay there, so I crawled over a few people to get to where I was at. And I was looking down, and I had one of my friends down there I was looking at, and I could see the dot on me, and I looked up, and he was recoiling. That's when he reloaded. And Mike Roderick, you're my hero. Because that was the same time that the lights went out. And I ran. I made it to the parking lot. He expended that clip in there. I can't account for what happened in there after that because I was out in the parking lot. People ask me how I made it out from being in the back. I say, luck and the grace of God. And I think he shot at me twice when I was running up, when he reloaded, but I can't tell because I was to the door. And while I was in the parking lot, I see Steve, I can't remember his last name, Val. He come out say that again? Lizon. He come out the arcade door and just fell to the ground. And 2 or 3 seconds later, that's when the shooter came out, pulled the clip out, put it in his pocket, grabbed another one, got in his car, and left. and I see him leave, but it was a strange situation. Jennifer, who was out by the front where the dumpster was, there was 2 cars that were right out there, and I see one back up, and he was getting in his car. He let him in the middle of them, and they all drove off together. But I think that first car was asking Jennifer if she was all right. But it kind of looked kind of weird to me, and I thought there was 3 cars, but it was just the one. And I got to the door to go back in, and I see Jennifer out there, and she was like, "I'm shot." And I said, "Are you okay, though?" She's standing up, walking around. I said, "There's a lot of people in there that need my help right now." I said, I'm going to go in, but if you need me to stay, I'll stay. And she was like, "Give me the wave sign." And I went in, and I told everybody that he was gone and helped these people and all that. And that's when, you gotta understand, John and Jeannie, they're up in age, over 70 and stuff. So my first thought was, where's Jeannie? And Jeannie and Steve was consoling each other right there, but they were under the table. And I got her up to his seat, and I looked at him and see he was all right. But I grabbed my cell phone, and I went to go find John, and it didn't look good. But I saw back there, it did not look good. And John was still laying face down. And I see Peyton, and I work for them at BIW. I don't work at BIW, but I work at BIW. I work for BIW, I work at BIW. So I helped him for a little bit, as much as I could, and then I see John moving, and I got him and Jeannie out of there, and I got them out to the parking lot, and John was talking with Jeannie for a second. I went out the arcade, and I saw Kelsey. I got him in there to help more people, because he was coming back in, because he saw Mr. Carr leave, and it was just chaos. I got them into the parking lot, went back inside. I kept saying, "He's gone, he's gone, he's gone," help these people. That's when the people come out of the utility closet, and that's when the state police and everybody came around the corner. I thought I was going to get shot when coming out there. But this has been extremely emotional on myself and my family, because I'm truly not the same person. I still love to make people laugh, but a lot of situations that happened that a lot of people glanced over, like when we were outside in the parking lot, 5, 6 times with your name, phone number, and address by every different identity that was there. Something's got to be in place, because they moved us from one spot to the next spot, to the next spot, to the next spot. Finally, we ended up by the ambulance, which was the worst place to put us, because they put us in line of sight of Steve Ella. And Richard, he was trying to communicate with me as best he could, and he was like, I had to go talk to the person who was on the other side of the tape 4 times to do something. It took another individual to come over, because I was starting to get mad. And that guy looked at him and says, "You haven't done nothing yet?" "I'm making sure these people are here." That's all he said. I'm like, we're in the line of sight. That's not correct, what we have to look at. But they, and then when we got to the armory, we had more identities. State police, FBI, EMTs from different locations. They all wanted our information all over again. You know, it gets annoying. We just went through a traumatic experience, and the worst thing you need to do is keep repeating your name, address, and phone number. You know, something's got to be in place where these networks talk to each other. I can't believe there isn't one now, because how do they know what's going on in a situation like this? But you guys already heard about, you know, going back to the same location for the stuff, so I'm not going to dwell on that anymore. But I am seeking therapy. Thank God I do have the VA, And I got a therapist, Brandon, he's great. He kind of relates with me as like one of the soldiers, but I was a machinist mate in the Navy, pump kicker, wrench turner. Never had no combat experience whatsoever. And, you know, he says it's kind of the same thing. I said, well, it's really not. I had a 1-pound cornhole bag. And I dropped that after like the 15th shot. So it's really not the same. I'm not trained in any of that. But he's working with me, and I'm thankful for that, and thankful I have that service. So I think I'm good.
We thank you for sharing this, and we thank you for being here today. It takes a lot.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Jason, I was wondering if you could walk me through a little bit, and once you got out and the first responders are showing up and stuff like that, do you remember how you folks were informed to where to go? Or did they try to tell you guys to meet at some place and then move? Because I'm trying to figure how do you all get to the Army? Was there another place between then that you guys were at that they told you to be safe at or anything like that?
We went from being moved around from location in the parking lot at Schmeggy's. Okay. Then we got ambulanced over to the Armory. And then later that night, we got over to Auburn Middle School.
And at the parking lot, they were moving you, they weren't saying why. They were just saying,
No.
I just need you to move from here over there.
We were perfectly fine under the light at the entrance to when you first pull in, you'd be right, there's a light in the sign that says Schmeggy's. We were all under that. It was like 17 of us, we were all there. And then next thing you know, we had to move up to where the second row parking was, then move up to there. Then they kind of worked their way up to the ambulance, and it was like, why?
Okay. And again, I know this is detail. Were you folks told by different people? I mean, what I mean, okay, Lewiston police may say one thing, and then another police department see something else. And
Exactly.
Okay.
No communication between any of the identities in a situation like this, and with our technology today, I think that can be possible.
Thank you.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's that particular issue, communication and coordination is something that the different agencies are really looking into.
Good.
I think people recognize it. Something to look into. Thank you.
Yep.
I may have misheard you, but did you say that you saw Robert Card's vehicle leave?
Yes.
Drive away?
I made it from the back of the building out the front door to hide in the parking lot, watching him walk across the parking lot, get in his car, back up and leave.
And which direction did he go? Towards Lewiston or towards Lisbon?
Went towards Lisbon.
Did any police talk to you about that right away to get
Yes.
an idea which direction he'd gone?
Yes.
And you gave them that information?
Yes.
But I think you said, so you work for the supervisor shipbuilding in Bath?
I do.
And so you commute to work sometimes through Lewiston, but sometimes through Bowdoin and,
Sometimes I take the back road and turn up down to the Allen Pond Road, to the Sabattis Road, and come out and down by the Settlement Landing. And then either I can go into Lisbon or take the back way out comes out by Lee Toyota and Thompson.
but it sounds like you're pretty familiar with all the roads around there.
I got 4 different ways to go to work, depending on the frost heaves.
And so once he turned south towards Lisbon, did he have a lot of different routes he could follow to escape?
He did. I am a firm believer if Mike didn't shut those lights out, he would have stayed there and had it dealt with the police when they got there. He thought they were already there because the look on his face when he stepped out was like, there's nobody here. So he had to go to a plan B. I mean, you're telling me that I know all those routes going back, that all he had to do was go down a mile and a half more, bang a left, and take the Settlement Road right back to his house. He could have been, you take those back roads where everybody was focused in Auburn and Lewiston, the way he was going through Lisbon, in an hour and a half, he could have been in Bethel. Think about that.
So, how long before October 25th had it been since you'd seen him? Do you know?
The Friday night cornhole usually stops in, what, April, May? April, May, and it stops for the summer because everybody has stuff to do, weekend, family stuff, whatever. And it picks up back up in the fall, so it was like early spring of '23.
And did you notice anything different about his behavior then?
I honestly thought his brother had issues more than he did.
I didn't hear that, I'm
I
sorry.
said, I honestly thought his brother had issues more than he did. But he was, I mean, it was like the 5th or 6th time before he actually said he was in the Army National Guard that I met him. So there wasn't much dialect. It was more or less, we just sat next to each other or whatever, but.
All right, I see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Ben Dyer. We have one more after this, so for those of you who are wondering where lunch is, we're not there yet.
So, I'm Ben Dyer. This is my girlfriend, Keela Smith, and I'm a survivor. As you've heard the story of Schmeggies and the chaos, I could go through it all again. But I was shot 5 times. I've lost my index finger on my right hand. Currently, I have no movement in my right hand. I lost my bicep and tricep in my right arm. My right arm will never carry more than 10 pounds. I've got a bullet hole in my shoulder. I've got a couple bullet holes in my legs. I currently have shrapnel throughout my body. And in my leg, I have a partial bullet still that sits there that I can play with on any occasion. And my surgeon has said he could take it out if I really wanted to, but I'm not ready because I'm still not done healing. That night, I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was a sub. I wasn't playing in the league currently. But Joe Walker texted me in the morning asking if I could play to fill in for people. So I was one of the first ones asked to fill in. So I was there as a sub. In the game, when it occurred, I was being a sub for a sub because somebody hadn't made it there yet. So I was down away. Rubber Card shot me through a wall. He didn't care what was happening. He wanted carnage. When everyone speaks of him going into the pinball room and coming out, he did come out and he did start shooting again because I looked him right in the face when he shot me through my hands. We can talk about lots of things, but the biggest thing is the mental health was there. People knew this was going to happen, and nobody stopped it. He had told multiple people that he worked with that he was interested in doing a mass shooting. Where they found his body was at his work. He was waiting there for Friday morning for work to start, and if they would have opened up the bay door, he was going to cause more carnage. But they shut everything down to find him, which was probably one of the smartest moves they did, but it should never have happened to begin with. I live with it. I wear wind pants and t-shirts because that's what I can put on and take off easily. I can't wear jeans very often because I can't button the button yet. But the key word is yet, because we're working on it. The system needs to be fixed. The mental health system in the state of Maine has failed for years. I've worked in special education. I've seen the demise of how few opportunities you have to help these people. I'm fortunate enough that I have a therapist that I go to, but that's in Ellsworth because I spend half my week in Ellsworth at my girlfriend's house because I still need assistance doing things. The other half of the time, the weekends, we come back to my house in Auburn so we can be with my kids. It's not an easy life, and this should never have happened. We need to find the holes, and it really starts at a young age. When things like this are identified with people, somebody needs to help them. And it shouldn't be like everyone here has said that they went to a therapist and they got 6 appointments or they got 5 appointments. The insurance companies in the state are allowed to say no. Nope, we're not going to cover you for your services anymore. It's not right. I have physical therapy in every 8th appointment. So I go 3 times a week. So every 2.5 weeks, my 8th appointment, I have to do an evaluation to see how much has changed before my insurance says that they will pay for me to go to 8 more visits. You authorize, I have 50 visits in my plan, but I have to check in every 8 and waste an appointment doing an evaluation that we know. Oh, my fingers still don't work. My hand doesn't work yet. My nerve graft, I have a nerve graft in my arm. So that's what we're waiting on. We're waiting to see if it connects, if it grows properly. And I get feeling back. These fingers, I have no feeling. I can't do things. I have a 12-year-old son from this that has had to become a man. He's gone into hockey games with me at the Mariners when I'm actually wearing pants and jeans and stood there so he could help zip my fly when I'm done in the bathroom. 12 years old. Should never ask your kid to do that. We have children. When we have children, we all know that we're going to eat warm or cold food when we're out because we're taking care of theirs. My kids do that for me. Keela does that for me. I can't order a steak in a restaurant because I can't cut it by myself. So if I get it, someone's going to eat a cold meal or I'm going to eat a cold meal when everyone else is done. That's because the system failed. The system failed everybody here. We've all been through hell. We continue to live it. But like you said, what's the difference between the victim and the survivor? I've chosen that I'm no longer a victim of anything. I am a survivor of an incident, and I'm going to keep moving and living on my life the best that I can. But you guys as a panel need to help fix the system and find the holes. And it starts with the mental health. The state cut, I don't know, millions of dollars, 5 years ago, to the mental health system? Why? Oh, we don't really need it. Well, yeah, you do. Sorry. These kids, adults, we need someone to speak to if something goes wrong, and we shouldn't have to chase. Anybody in this room that was a survivor shouldn't have to chase a therapist, a doctor to look at their problems, whatever. There's not enough out there. And half the therapists you want to go to, guess what? They tell you it's out of network, or they don't take insurance. So they show up and they charge you $150 every time you walk into their office. So guess what? It gets expensive, and some people don't have that. Okay, we're lucky. Some of it gets reimbursed to us. But do we have time to wait for the state to reimburse me? Some do, some don't. And it's not fair. The system is broken and needs to be fixed. That's pretty much all I got to say.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
You've laid out a menu of a great expanse here. But sure we're all impressed by the fact that you're doing well. And
Don't have a choice. We got to keep living.
that's right. That's the lesson in life is you got to go on. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we've certainly looked at, the things that led up to the incident. But hearing from survivors and victims helps us to understand what needs to be fixed for the deaf community, for people seeking help after such a tragedy. And so I guess can't emphasize enough how useful it is to hear from folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Makes it alive. So,
Got to live.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby Nichols.
Do I sit here?
Yeah.
Here?
Either way.
Okay, my name is Bobby Nichols. On October 25th, I was bowling with my sister on a league, I too was a sub. I had never bowled on that league. I was just subbing for the owner of Mixers. And I showed up at spare time at 5:30, and my sister showed up around 5:45. We had something to drink. She introduced me to all her friends because she worked at the bowling alley. It started off a good night. I met a lot of nice people, and some I knew already, some I didn't. She introduced me to every one of them. My sister was a hugger. She loved to hug people. So most of them were like, you know, you have to hug me. So what happened is when you first walk into the building, on the right-hand side, we were bowling. We started bowling at 6:30, kind of like practicing bowling, 6:15, 6:30-ish. And I would be on the first lane. My sister was on the 6th lane. So what I would do is I would bowl, and then I would go watch her bowl, and we'd be like high-fiving. And it started out a really good night, and me and my sister were always close, and we wanted to be closer. And she worked 3 jobs, and whatever it took for us to spend time together, we did it. So when she called me up at 4 o'clock that day, she says, I'm wondering if you'd like to sub sometime on the league. And I'm like, well, yeah. And she goes, well, I might have to call you sometime. I said, that's not a problem. She called me at 4:30. Can you sub tonight? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. So I think we were, on my team, we had several people out. So we were into like the fifth inning or whatever you call it. And other teams weren't. They were probably like in the 3rd. And I went to where she was bowling and she wasn't there. And I was like, I wonder where she is. I didn't know at the time, but I do know now that there was an issue with a couple of lanes, and being that she worked there, even though it was her night off, she knew what to do. So she went up front and she was doing that, and I'm not exactly sure where she was because I couldn't find her. And I heard a big bang, and I used to be a hunter, so guns never bothered me, but this noise was not like a regular gun. This was very, very loud. And it felt like a chandelier had fell and broke into a million pieces, glass. And I was just like, what was that? And I looked to my left really quick, and I seen the gun. I did not see Robert Card. I just seen the gun in his hand. It was like seconds. That, and then I seen somebody that had been shot in it. I still see that every day. I see that. And all of a sudden I was on the floor because everybody was running to get out. And there's only a small area there because you have the lanes and you have the desk and you have the cubbies. So I'm on the floor, and then I got up, and then people were running, crammed in together. And at the time, I could feel the breath. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest, and that I couldn't breathe. And of course, I was afraid. And I'm not much afraid of much, but I was afraid. And I knew that I had to get out of there because he was going to kill me. And I couldn't look back. And I had people falling on me, and I was falling on people just trying to get out. And I'm thinking, is somebody shot that's landing on me? I finally got out, and it was dark, and I didn't know where to go. And there was like probably about 8 of us in our little group. And we just kept running and running till we came to a fence, and then there was nowhere else to go, and we didn't know where he was. And the guys, there was like 3 of us girls and the rest were guys, and they were like, where is he? Where is he? This guy's crazy. This guy's crazy. And we're like, shh, we don't want him to find us here, you know, and we're hiding behind the trees. There was a few trees there. And I kept saying, I want my sister out of there. And we stayed at the fence for about, I don't know, the concept of time that night, nothing makes sense. Everything happened so fast. But we were waiting, and then the cops were showing up, and they were like everywhere. And they were in SWAT gear, and they were just, ambulances were everywhere. And we kept thinking, we have to come out, we have to come out. You know, we don't know where he is, we have to come out. So as a group of us, we started to walk towards, because we were on this side of the building, and the cops were on this side, and we were over here, and we started walking, and then we started putting our hands up, like, don't shoot, don't shoot. And they came running right at us, the cops, and they were surrounded us, and we were like, run, run, run. So we were running, and they were all around us. And I'm thinking, I have to call someone. I don't have my phone, I don't have my keys. Out of all the people there was probably 3 people at the bowling alley that might had their cell phones. And they weren't letting anybody use them either. You know what I mean? I finally got a hold of, I asked the cop if I could use the phone to call my boyfriend and tell him what had happened before he'd seen it on the news. And I just called him, and he says, I'm coming. And I said, you can't come because the road is closed. You can't get in here. Just wait. I will call. I don't have my phone. I can't get in my car. I don't have my keys. I can't go nowhere. I have to stay. So I waited, and it was like 2.5 hours, and we were all in a group in front of the senior center, and we were all out front, and the cops were surrounding us and telling us, you know, you can't leave, you guys are witnesses, you know, we're doing what we can, and this and that. And finally, 2.5 hours later, one of the owners came out, and I asked her, where is my sister? And she says, I'm sorry she didn't make it. In my life, as soon as she told me that, I went to the ground. I couldn't breathe. And somebody says, she should get in an ambulance. And I'm like, no, the ambulance is for people that that are hurt. And I'm okay. And I started to walk away, and I ended up on the ground again. So they put me in an ambulance, and they took me to the hospital. And there was all kinds of cops there. I went to St. Mary's, and they put me in a padded room. And I was there for about an hour or so. They gave me some medication. They tried to get my blood pressure and all that together. And then the state police came and told me to draw a diagram of where I was at and what I could tell them, and I did. And I did try to call my mother, because she lives in Florida. And I couldn't remember her number, so I couldn't call her. But she knew. She knew because a mother knows. A mother knows. She knew. And this is the first time I've actually heard other people speak about what happened to them. And everybody's different. And we're all hurting. Some have family, some have friends, some has people in the community. I've been quite alone. But I'm dealing with it. I've been in counseling for 12 weeks. I'm at a point right now where it's really not working for me. I have a lot of trauma, and my counselor is not trained in that at all. She's very young. I've given her 12 weeks. I would have stayed with her, but I found out that she actually told me that I need a psychiatric specialist, which I'm sure I do. I've had a lot of grappling with what happened that night. I know the Card family. We grew up in Bowdoin, all of us. I have two brothers and I had my sister, and we all grew up in Bowdoin. We had cows and chickens, all that. Matter of fact, we grew up on the West Road, the same road Robert Card lived on. I know his family. I don't know him. I know his family. I know what his family has gone through. I get it. They tried. They tried to get him help. They were in hiding almost a month before he did the shooting. His ex-wife, his 18-year-old child, which is not a child, but his parents, a couple of his co-workers and reservists, they knew. Lots of people knew. 2 weeks in a psychiatric hospital in New York. Sorry, don't cut it. They put him in involuntary but allowed him out in 2 weeks. That's not even a protocol I've ever heard. New York is a red flag. Yeah, they took his guns, but they didn't take his family's guns. Everybody can blame, Card all they want. And yeah, I do hold him responsible. I do. Because he had moments of lucidness. He may have been mentally ill, and I believe he was. And I believe that he has lucid moments, too. You had to know exactly what you were doing when you went to 2 places of business and killed 18 people and destroyed how many lives? Many people's lives. Not just the people that went through the shooting. Their children, their family. Everyone is affected by this. I have grappled through this, and I have tried to deal with this. I have a hard time leaving my house. I don't go nowhere. I very rarely talk to people. I have a hard time reaching out for help, and I know I'm not the only one. How many others are not at one of these? This is my first in front of the group, and many other people can't do it. And I kept saying to myself, I can't do this, I can't do this. I have to do this, I have to do this. My life is never gonna be the same. Never. I'm not the same person that I was. I'm really struggling. I can't work. Some days I go days I can't talk to nobody. I stay in my bedroom. I don't go nowhere. Nobody understands me. My brothers, they don't understand. They understand about losing their sister, yes, but they don't understand that I was there, I went through the shooting. They don't want to accept that. That's okay, though. That's them. I've come to the point where I'm at, where I've had to let some family members and push them aside because I need to work on me. And they don't get it. They just don't get it. My boyfriend ended up with Bell's palsy because of all the stress that he's had to go through me. And for like 2 months, his face was all messed up. The stress and the anxiety and the, I have like a double duty because here I am trying to deal with the shooting and trying to deal with my sister's death. And And I know I'm not the only one that was there during the shooting that lost a loved one. I don't know what other people are going through. All I know is what I'm going through, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And my kids don't get it. Nobody gets it. You can explain it all you want. It's hard. You can't. I have days when I cannot even leave my bedroom because I don't feel safe. I understand that, yes, Maine has a problem with mental health. Every state has a problem with it. There's not enough resources. There's not enough counselors. There's not enough. And, you know, all these gun laws, the bottom line is you can pass 1,000 gun laws, okay? If you don't follow the protocol, why have them? This guy didn't just show 1 or 2 episodes. This was a constant thing since late January last year when his ex-wife had to go to the school, same school I graduated from, same school that all my kids graduated from, Mount Ararat. They went there because her own son didn't want to go to his house because that's why he was afraid. That was the end of January 2023 that happened. She had to go in hiding. His girlfriend had to go in hiding. His co-workers, his reservist friends, which a lot of the people in the reservists with him, about 75% of them are police officers or were police officers. That's not really very common to be that high. I know for a fact that 2 officers that I know seen what he did that night when the state police took him to the hospital. One of his good friends, they didn't listen to him. So I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times. How many people knew? They didn't just think, you know, he's a little bit off his rocker, he might do this. People knew, because that's exactly what he said. I am going to do a mass shooting. People are afraid of me, because they know what I'm capable of. Most mental people don't say that, but then they do. But this went on for months and months and months. And I am angry with the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department because I lived in Saginaw County for most of my life. I grew up in Bowdoin. I know all these people. By him, Joel Mary, sheriff, he stopped going over there altogether. Matter of fact, they blew it away like it was a nothing. A week before the shooting, when his family was in hiding for almost a month, and they knew that it wasn't their family's problem to go get the guns. It wasn't their job to go get the guns. It was Saginaw County, and they can talk about the yellow law, and there's a process in the way that things that they do. But they already knew he had a psych eval. They already knew that he was in there. Maybe they didn't know everything. But when your job is to protect, your job is protect. And I think that it's not about cops being labeled in one sense. Every cop is different. I used to be a court advocate for abused women. Lots of great cops. Lots of them. Some of them just don't care, period. Some people will pass the buck on to the next one, the deputy, or this one, or that one. Well, you know what? I think it's time that we hold people accountable. Because if there's accountability, maybe people will follow the protocols that are there. And you can pass a red law or whatever. More than likely, if they would have gotten his guns, he would have just got another one. But maybe if he would have been kept in a mental institution or whatever, and I'm sure there's protocols, you can't do that. You can't keep people for long periods of time unless there's a proof. But 2 weeks, I'm sorry. 2 weeks of counseling with me, was still in a fog. I'm still in a fog. I'm still grappling with the realization that my sister is dead. It's like I have so much anxiety and everything, and sick to my stomach. I've had pneumonia twice, you know? I've been physically, mentally, emotionally sick. And it's been a fight. It's been a real fight, and I didn't want to talk in public. I wanted to do it in private. But you know what? Every person that talked today that I heard, I could relate. I was like, you know what? There are other people that feel like I do. And I get it. A lot of people, this is new. It's never happened in Maine. I get it. But I want people to be held accountable for not following protocol, okay? You know, you're going to have people that are mentally ill that may not show signs like Robert Carr did. Many people don't show signs. Many people don't talk about doing mass shootings either. Many people that are sick don't. This one did. And how many people noticed? Lots of people noticed.
I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've been going for a long time.
Okay.
And the ASL interpreters are working hard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if you, just a moment. Yeah. If you could just come to take that into consideration and bring it to some sort of a conclusion so that we can go on.
That's fine. I have a question for you guys. Are you guys gonna interview the Card family?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
I also would like to know my last thing. Are we going to be able to know your decision and where you come up to your...
There'll be
before you release it to the media, because everything else is being released to the media and we don't know nothing.
Right. There'll be a written report, a public written report. We may present it in two pieces, and they'll be presented to the governor publicly, and then they'll be distributed widely. So it will not be, you may hear about it through the media, but it'll be available beforehand, and you'll be able to read it.
Won't be able to go to a meeting to ask anything or anything like that.
Well, we haven't discussed that, but we will deliver a public report, a written public report.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further?
Nope.
Any questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you very much.
Just a comment, Dan. I'm sorry to hold us up, but I just want to make the comment that for months now we've been hearing about Lewiston Strong. And maybe some people think that's just a slogan, but I think what we're hearing today is the reality of the strength of this town, this community. All the people who have spoken here today have been so strong. So thank you very much.
Thank
you. And everyone else.
All right.
Okay.
And let me say for the benefit of everyone that when this commission was created, the governor and the attorney general issued a charge to us, which was a humbling charge. If you read it, you'd say, I'm not sure that I really want to do this or that I'm capable of doing it or whatever. But nonetheless, we all accepted. And today, you folks have added powerfully an emphasis to that charge. You've all done it, every one of you that has spoken. And so that the charge, you've made that charge even more alive and more real than it has ever been, to me at least, in the past. I knew it was something I was humbled by, and you folks have really added to that. So we thank you very much for making this here today. It's been tough for you folks. It's tough for everyone who will hear it. Our entire system has suffered a loss of security and you folks have suffered terribly above and beyond that. So thank you very much, and you will hear further probably from other hearings that we will have. And as I said, we'll have a report, perhaps an interim report earlier, and then later on within the coming months, a final report, and it will be made available publicly. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.